Chapter 88. Although skill books could be purchased repeatedly to increase proficiency, it was not something that would appear whenever one wished. According to Ryudo's previous experience in the item store, the skill books in the skill store were also one death, one exchange, and there was no telling what kind of items would appear. Therefore, if one wanted to level up a specific skill, it required a lot of luck. If one was unlucky, even if they died 3 to 5 times, they might not be able to get the skill book they wanted. However, this blank skill book was different. It could actually increase the proficiency of any skill. It was simply an omnipotent skill leveling tool. Of course, based on such a convenient foundation, it was much more expensive than normal skill books. One skill book actually cost 10 million. What a robbery! What kind of concept was 10 million? One should know that the 4 practical skills, Iron Bone Mastery, Bronze Skin Mastery, Rogues Don't Die by Bare Hands, and Parkour Pro only cost 8 million. In a situation where one was not rich, such an expensive item was not worth buying. After all, there was a high chance that it would fail, and the skill book would also have a high chance of being refreshed. However, Ryudo hesitated for a moment and looked at the Furamaki-style martial arts in his skill pane, which only had a 1% proficiency. Unlike the other purchase skills, the ancient shepherd-style martial arts was a skill that had been imparted to Zhang Xian orally by Master Sotaro. Thus, the starting proficiency of the skill was ridiculously low, making it impossible to use it normally. At the same time, because it was not in the skill store, Ryudo could not buy the skill book to increase its proficiency. He could only look at it and pretend that it did not exist. However, with the blank skill book, the situation changed. As long as Ryudo was willing, he could spend 10 million to immediately raise the Furamaki-style martial arts to 21% proficiency, and this level of proficiency could be used in actual combat. If that's the case, I can go to Furamaki's appointment tonight openly, right? Thinking of this, Ryudo's mind flashed with the image of a playful old man. Today happened to be the 7th day of his appointment with Furamaki Sotaro, which was also the day he was going to attend the appointment tonight. To be honest, Ryudo didn't want to go because he didn't think it was meaningful to go. After all, during this period of time, Ryudo had not practiced the profound meaning of skill, Tiger Fall at all. Naturally, it was impossible for him to use it in actual combat. Since he couldn't use it anyway, what was the point of going there to embarrass himself? It would be better for him to be tactful and not show up. However, since he had the blank skill book, Ryudo could go and meet the old man for a while. This was because his Furamaki-style martial arts had indeed reached a level where it could be used in actual combat. What should I do? This is 10 million. Ryudo couldn't help but scratch his head. He seemed to be in a dilemma as to whether or not he should directly invest such a large sum of money in Furamaki-style martial arts. Beep beep, beep beep beep. However, at this moment, Ryudo's phone suddenly vibrated slightly. This was a sign that someone had sent a message. Ryudo picked up his phone and looked at it. Only then did he realize that the person who was looking for him was Yunyin from Tsukujiri. He looked at the time again. It was only 7 in the morning. Why did Yunyin wake up so early and send him a message? When he opened the message, Ryudo's expression immediately became a little dumbfounded. Speaking of which, you're going to report your results to the old man of ancient martial arts tonight, right? I'm so excited. If this plot was written in a novel, it would definitely be very interesting. Thinking of this, I couldn't sleep the whole night. P greater than over equal to with Q. Before Ryudo could respond, a second message came. Actually, if you don't mind, can you bring me to the report tonight? I want to see the scene of a martial arts test between master and disciple with my own eyes. Please, 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 *omega \**. After reading these 2 consecutive messages, Ryudo seemed to see Yunyin nervously holding the phone on the other side, waiting for his reply through the phone. From a certain point of view, Yunyin from Tsukujiri was really a very innocent person. After all, she was very well protected by her family since she was young. The dangers of the world seemed to have nothing to do with her. But even so, Yunyin was too excited. She was like a primary school student who was ready to go hiking. If he had known, he wouldn't have told her the story of the old man Furamaki. Suddenly, Ryudo sighed slightly. He looked at the message and couldn't help but shake his head. So far, Ryudo had already made a contract with 2 ladies. The first contract was a 2-year contract with colored glaze, and the second contract was a research contract with Yoon Yin. According to the content of the previous contract, Ryudo needed to provide Yoon Yin with his daily life and some information about the underground world to help her write a more realistic and tense novel plot. Therefore, during this period, Ryudo often chatted with Yoon Yin in various places and told her about some of the things that happened around him. Unfortunately, it included the story of him following his father's order to find the Furamaki Ryu master. Ryudo obviously didn't take this matter too seriously, but Yoon Yin took it seriously. She was even more nervous than him. I didn't expect Yoon Yin to be so concerned about this kind of thing. Forget it. I'll take her there tonight. As if he didn't want to disappoint her, Ryudo typed, "No problem, let's talk at school" on his phone and sent the message back. 2 seconds after sending the message, a very cheerful "good yesha" was quickly sent back. Through the small emoji, Yoon Yin's cheers seemed to be close to his ears. Okay, there's no turning back now. After putting down the phone, Ryudo looked up at the familiar ceiling of the room and clicked on the blank skill book option. There was no other way. Since Yoon Yin wanted to see him compete with the old man Furamaki, then Ryudo had to increase the proficiency of the Furamaki Ryu-style martial arts, no matter what. Otherwise, if he was defeated by the old man in an unsightly posture when the two of them fought, and this kind of thing was personally witnessed and recorded in the book by Yoon Yin, then it would really be a great humiliation to the level of a society's death. As the 10 million disappeared, Ryudo's Furamaki Ryu-style martial arts also jumped to 21% proficiency. But this wasn't enough. After leveling up the skill, Ryudo went directly to the door and shouted at the courtyard next to him, "Come in. Here. Second generation master, what are your orders?" Before the voice died away, 3 extreme Dao in black suits rushed in from outside the courtyard not far away. Chapter 89. Near Ryudo, there were always more than 3 elite members of the Rulon group protecting him. Although Ryudo had always been suspicious of this group of elites who could not even be discovered when he sneaked out, it was undeniable that this group of extreme Dao members were indeed good at fighting. After seeing the 3 people appear, Ryudo also pointed at the nearest one and ordered, "You come over and punch me hard." Punch the second King Yanluo hard? Yes. Even if he received such a strange order, the black-clothed extreme Dao still chose to obey unconditionally. Judging from this obedience, it was not unreasonable for Fujiki to say that they were the elite members of the Rulon group. They already felt a bit like soldiers. Therefore, the tall and strong black-clothed extreme Dao quickly moved his body and walked in front of Ryuto. He raised his fists and clenched his iron-like fists, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. In the next second, the black-clothed man's right foot turned slightly, and he suddenly exerted force on the ground. Using his foot as his waist, his belt as his shoulder, and his shoulder as his shoulder, he threw a very standard right straight punch at Ryudo's face. Obviously, he should have seriously practiced boxing for a long time. After all, the movement of this punch was quite standard. The strength of his whole body was smooth when he swung his arm, and there was even a faint, crisp sound. Ah, so that's how it is, I understand now. But the moment the black-clothed man threw a punch, Ryudo's body almost instinctively made a corresponding movement in sync with him. The young man's feet stepped forward, and his right knee quickly crouched. While his body sank to the right front, his left arm was like a whip, and he heavily bombarded the midline of the black-clothed man's abdomen with a punching posture. Ugh! The moment the punch landed, the black-clothed man only felt as if the air in his lungs had exploded. His breathing stopped on the spot, and his entire body's continuous punch movement also stopped in a strange posture. I can't move? What am I doing? Before the man in black could recover from the stagnation effect brought by this punch, Long Do had quickly circled to the side of his body and took out a dragon-tooth sawtooth saber from somewhere and placed it on the man's neck. From the moment the man in black threw a punch to the moment the knife was placed on his neck, only a second had passed. For a moment, the fear of being killed enveloped Black Robe's body. He didn't even have the time to feel the pain of his lungs exploding and the suffocating pain. Cold sweat quickly dripped down his forehead. How are you? Are you all right? After feeling his fear, Ryudo also quickly withdrew his sword, reached out and patted the shoulder of the man in black, and asked with concern, "Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh." Immediately, the black-clothed man who was punched pressed his hand against his abdomen and took a few deep breaths. Then, he said with admiration, "Second-generation head, you are really amazing." This subordinate is truly impressed. Although the black-clothed man didn't use his full strength when punching, Ryudo was the same in this aspect. If the two sides really fought, the result would definitely be the black-clothed man being paralyzed by a punch and then being finished off by the saber. Especially in the eyes of the two extreme Taoists on the side, Ryudo's dodging and punching just now was really amazing. Almost at the same time the man punched, his body had already completed the dodging movement, and at the same time, he struck first. The most terrifying thing was that Ryudo's counterattack just now was almost impossible to defend against. This was also one of the three profound skills of the Furamaki sect, the core skill of profound skill of Tigerfall. The essence of profound skill of Tigerfall was to use a short distance, small movement to exert force. The moment the enemy attacked, the 1-inch punch would hit the opponent's diaphragm first. If the position, angle, and strength were all suitable, the diaphragm that was hit would produce a transient spasm phenomenon, causing the breathing to stagnate and the body to enter a rigid state. For a short period of time, the opponent would be at his mercy. Judging from the situation when Ryuto used profound skill of Tigerfall on someone in actual combat for the first time, his mastery of Furamaki sect martial arts was already quite good. Although the proficiency of this skill was only 21%, this proficiency was already considered a novice and could be used in actual combat. If one wanted to slowly cultivate to this level under normal circumstances, it would be impossible to do it without a few years of time. Except for a natural-born freak like Yuma. Just like this, in the next hour, Ryudo let the three black-clothed bodyguards act as his helpers. Or to put it more bluntly, he was actually using Tigerfall to beat the three of them to the ground in turns. Through using this skill over and over again, Ryudo also quickly grasped the key to this skill. Combined with his current strong physical fitness, it could be used to great effect. Not long ago, after all of his attributes were increased, the benefits of the attribute increase could be said to be immediate. LV3 Courage could help Ryudo remain calm in any situation. Even in an intense battle, he could still remain unbelievably calm. LV2 Insight gave him stronger dynamic vision and observation, allowing him to see the opponent's movements more clearly. Combined with profound skill of Tigerfall, it was like adding wings to a tiger. If he added the newly acquired skills, as well as the few high-end equipment hidden on his body that he could take out at any time, it could be said that the current Ryudo was at least 3 to 4 times stronger than a week ago. He had reached the point where he could truly be called the second generation of the Rulon group, Ryudo Kiryo. As time passed by, the 8:00 clock alarm to prepare for school rang as promised. Phew, it's about time to prepare for school. All right, the three of you go and have a good rest. If you feel uncomfortable, report it as a work injury. Yes, yes. Seeing the second-generation head leisurely walk out, the three black-clothed men, who were lying on the ground, responded in a weak tone. It was obvious that they had been taught a little badly. However, just as Ryudo was about to walk toward the door and get into Narukai Otani's car as usual, Narukai ran toward him with heavy steps. Second generation? Not good. Early in the morning, Otani's tone was very serious, as if he had seen something that made him turn pale with fright. When Ryudo saw his expression, he frowned. What's going on? Is there an enemy attack? It's not an enemy, but there's a very expensive-looking car parked at the entrance of our headquarters, and the owner of the car said that they're waiting for you to go to school together. A very expensive car? Waiting for me to go to school together? What the hell? After hearing Otani's words, Ryudo walked out of the door with a stomach full of curiosity. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he saw senior sister Yun Yen sitting in a very special-looking black car and waving at him with a smile. Chapter 90. When Ryudo saw the car that was usually used to pick up and drop off Yun Yen, he immediately understood what Narukai meant by "it looks expensive." This was a low-key but luxurious black extended luxury car. The body lines were upright, solemn, and magnificent. Every detail was taken into account to the point of amazement. As long as one had a little bit of knowledge about cars, it was not difficult to see that the price of this car was calculated with at least 7 digits, and these 7 digits were in USD. Mr. Name, the person in the car is, that's my friend. Don't worry about school today. Just pick me up after school in the afternoon. After telling Narukai, Ryudo did not hesitate to walk to the car parked outside. Seeing Ryudo walking over, Yin, who was sitting in the back seat, greeted with a smile, "Ryudo classmate, good morning. Is my appearance here bothering you?" "Not bothering, it's just a bit refreshing." Under Yunyan's signal, the door of the back seat was opened, and Ryudo also lowered his body slightly and sat in. Just like how it looked from the outside, the back seat of this extended limousine was quite spacious. It could almost accommodate 4 people playing mahjong inside. After sitting in, the middle-aged man in charge of driving frowned and snorted without leaving a trace. "Uncle Shinagawa, you can drive." "Yes, Mississippi," the middle-aged man nodded respectfully, but before starting the car, he turned his head and stared at Ryudo as if to convey the meaning of, "Don't touch Mississippi." Ryudo had never seen this middle-aged man in the game. He should be the person responsible for picking up and dropping off Yunyan. However, Yunyan was usually well protected by her family and almost never had contact with boys. It was not difficult to understand why this uncle was so wary of Ryudo. After all, this was the first time in many years that Miss Yunyan took a boy to school together. And from the happy expression on Miss Yunyan's face, she seemed to be very close to the boy. After getting in the car, Ryudo sighed and smiled bitterly. "Yunyan, you are too." Ahem. Before Ryudo finished speaking, Yunyan coughed and pointed at the phone. Beep beep, beep beep beep. Suddenly, Ryudo's phone rang with a text message. He opened the text message from Yunyan. It said, "Let's talk about anything. But tonight we have to talk on the phone to avoid being discovered by Uncle Shinagawa." At the same time, Yunyan said with a smile, "Ryudo, have you read the book Harry Peter and the Stone Ghost Mask I recommended to you last time?" "Yes, it's quite interesting, especially when Voldemort puts on the Stone Ghost Mask and shouts, 'Peter, I don't want to be a human anymore.' This scene is really epic-making." "Well, are you playing a cop movie here?" Ryudo replied while lowering his head to type a reply. "Aren't you a little too excited? Do you need to drive over to pick me up? Are you afraid that I won't take you? So you like that kind of big scene. In fact, my favorite scene in the first book is the scene where the first-generation Peter and Voldemort perish together, and Ginny drifts away from the sea with a child." "Hee, I'm not afraid that you won't take me up. I just want to talk to you about some details early, such as how you should pick me up tonight. I don't like tragedies. I don't like to read novels where the main character dies in the end. It's probably because I've died so many times. Should I pick you up tonight? How should I pick you up?" "Ha ha ha, Ryudo, you really know how to joke. How can a person die so many times? I'll send you the map of my house later. There's a special route for sneaking out. You just have to pick me up at the end." Just like that, Ryudo chatted with Yunyan on the surface while chatting with her on the phone. This kind of chatting made Ryudo's head buzzing. Fortunately, after Yunyan sent him the map, she stopped. Good heavens. I'm just bringing her out to watch a test. Why does it have to be so troublesome to sneak out of the house? Will she think that I'm kidnapping Yunyan? Suddenly, Ryudo felt like he had accidentally boarded a pirate ship. He originally thought that he could just tell Yunyan some of his true feelings and let her focus on her novel. But he didn't think that this Missy would become more and more addicted to it. She wanted to participate in it more and more. She didn't even hesitate to leave her house to go out with her male classmates at night. To put it simply, Yunyan seemed to be quickly learning bad things. She was already strictly disciplined by her family. She yearned for the outside world, especially for people like Ryuto who lived in the underworld. She had an unrealistic romantic fantasy. Therefore, after getting in touch with Ryuto, Yunyan was like a bird that quietly used a wire to pry open a birdcage. She was in the rebellious phase of young people, considering Yunyan's beautiful appearance and charm that could cause the downfall of a city. This state was actually very dangerous. It was very easy for her to be deceived by men with bad intentions. Cough cough. But fortunately, the person who took her out at night was me. Which young man in his teens could be as gentlemanly as me, more trustworthy than me? Thinking of this, Ryudo couldn't help but reach out and tidy up his hair. He seemed to have completely forgotten the shocking harem declaration he made in front of Colored Glaze not long ago. However, just as Ryudo and Union's conversation returned to the normal state, the special car was getting closer and closer to Dory First High School. But just when the car came to the last traffic light in the school area and stopped because of the red light, an antique car that was driving towards the school from the side of the road attracted Yun Yan's attention. Huh, isn't that the car of the Saito family? What? Saito family? When Long Do heard a familiar name, he quickly looked in the direction of the voice. But when he looked in the direction of the antique car, the car had quickly turned the corner and left. Ryudo could only see a silver-like color from the back seat. Wait, that's hair? This color of hair? Could it be? In this world, Ryudo only knew one person who had silver-like hair. That was the young lady of the ancient martial arts family, Saito Dunya. At the same time, she was also the third female protagonist in the game Red Album 2. No survivors. Chapter 91. In Red Photo Album 2, No Survivors, the three female leads had very different appearances, personalities, family backgrounds, and characteristics, so it was easy to distinguish them. The first female lead, Colored Glaze, belonged to the bureaucratic family, and her family had many connections with various government officials. The second female lead, Yun Yin, belonged to the capitalist family, and her family had many connections with various business people. The third female lead, Saito Dunya, belonged to the Jianghu family. Her family was basically the type that mingled in the Jianghu. Of course, this didn't mean that Dunya was an underground member like Ryuto. In fact, the Saito Martial Arts Dojo was an ancient martial arts family that had been passed down for hundreds of years and could be considered as another form of mingling in the Jianghu. The Saito Guild Hall was well versed in modern martial arts such as karate, judo, kickboxing, kendo, aido, and aikido, as well as ancient martial arts such as the art of war, the art of war, the art of war, the art of water, the art of bone, the art of spear, and the art of jujitsu. After hundreds of years of development, the dojo had covered the entire country, and almost everywhere there were martial arts practitioners, there would be a Saito martial arts dojo. It could be said that it was like a holy land for martial arts practitioners in the country. From this, it could be seen that the Saito family was a very ancient and traditional family, and its history was even longer than the Kamiyoshi family. Therefore, when the current head of the family secretly married a bear ballerina in the north and gave birth to a white-haired mixed-blood daughter, it was said that the Saito family experienced an earthquake. For the Saito family, which had always been famous for its long history and traditions, having a white-haired mixed blood in the family was like having a bear suddenly appear in a nest of Shiba Inu, and the shock was unimaginable. If it wasn't for the fact that Dunya's father was the most famous martial arts master of the current generation, and that he was strong enough to suppress the Curry people, she might have been directly thrown to the snowy north to fend for herself. But even if her father was still alive, Dunya, who was born in such a family, was naturally not liked since she was young. This matter was not new, and even Union knew about it. Silver white hair? Is that Saito Dunya? Oh right, she seems to be transferring to Dory First High School as well. It should be today. When Ryudo told Union what he had just seen, she immediately guessed the identity of the young lady in the car. Union would sometimes attend some banquets, and she had met Dunya once or twice. She had a deep impression of the cute doll-like child. Union, have you seen Dunya? Dunya? You call her so intimately. Do you know her? Cough. I've only heard of her name. After being glanced at by Union, Ryudo quickly shook his head. In fact, Ryudo didn't know Dunya. He was already quite familiar with her. After all, he was tortured by Dunya in the game's third quest. If Colored Glaze was its Sundara main character, Union was a natural healer, and Dunya was a naughty little devil. The white-haired loli was definitely a natural talent in teasing people and acting. She could fool people in minutes, and even if they were sold, they would still turn around and help her count the money. As for Dunya's personality problem, the idiotic netizens once used the phrase lack of love from a young age, need a beating when you grow up to accurately describe her. And everyone agreed that if it wasn't for Dunia's good looks, with her personality, she would have been beaten to death hundreds of times. But it couldn't be helped. In this kind of game, looks were everything. Morals and values followed one's facial features, and it wasn't as simple as a person's problem. Even a pervert like Yongji had a bunch of fanatics. She was really bold and had never died before. However, just as Ryudo and Yunyin were chatting about the young lady of the Saito family, the car slowly drove into the school area of Dori First High School. Because the main street was a pedestrian street, vehicles were not allowed to enter. All the vehicles that picked up students could only stop here. When the two of them got out of the car, they happened to see a little beauty, who looked like she was carved out of jade, walk out of the antique classic car that was not far away. Although she was wearing the same uniform as all the students here, no matter what kind of crowd, Saito Dunia was definitely the most eye-catching one. The premise was that her petite body wasn't completely covered by the crowd. As a mixed breed of hairy bear and Shiba Inu, Dunia's skin was so white that it was almost transparent. Her silky silver hair was tied into a cute twin ponytail with a ribbon behind her back. It naturally fell behind her slender waist. Her small and regular facial features, coupled with her emerald eyes, added a kitten-like sharpness and unapproachable feeling to this petite young miss. Overall, if the eldest daughter of the Saito family didn't open her mouth, she would look like a small and exquisite porcelain doll. Unfortunately, she had a mouth that could speak. As Dunia stepped out of the car door, the bodyguard in the car quickly poked his head out and said, "Young lady, remember to press the emergency button immediately if there's anything. We will rush in to protect you at any time." You've said this for the third time today. Do you think I'm the same as you, a pig that has to memorize the words emergency button? Humph. Hearing this, Dunia stopped for a moment, then turned her head and replied in her clear and sweet voice like a lark. Right? It's a pity that she has a mouth that can speak. If only she was stuffed with something, such as a mouth ball or something. If it was a normal person, it would be hard to imagine that such a cute little girl like a carved jade would speak such vulgar words. But the bodyguard in the car just nodded as if he was used to it. Well, the sharp-tongued loli was indeed worthy of her reputation. Unless she was in disguise, she would always be sharp-tongued. The vulgar words just now happened to be heard by Ryudo and Yunyin, who were walking over here. The former immediately showed a tacit expression. However, Yunyin, who heard Dunia for the first time, didn't have such a natural expression. Did I hear it wrong? Why would Dunia say that? Probably because she didn't wake up early in the morning, so she's in a bad mood. It's possible. I chatted with her for a while at a banquet before. At that time, she wasn't like this. She was obviously a very polite child. Just as Yunyin recalled the situation when she chatted with Dunia at that time, the girl with white hair and double ponytails who just said vulgar words seemed to have noticed Yunyin and Ryudo behind. The moment she saw Yunyin, Dunia first frowned slightly, and then the muscles on her face quickly twisted, and she immediately put on a calm and elegant, fake smile of a young lady. Chapter 92. In the Great Motherland, there is an art called face changing. It is said that an expert can change his face in 0.5 seconds. Although everyone knows that Dunia can't change her face, her speed of changing her face at this time is not slower than a professional face-changing actor. Oh, isn't this Yunyin? Guyan, it's really a bright morning. After changing into the big Miss face, Dunia walked with a calm smile, elegantly walked in front of Dunia, and nodded slightly to her. The first rule of the big miss: use honorifics when talking, even if it's a little redundant, don't care. The second rule of the eldest miss: when you speak, you have to lengthen your sentences and slow down your pace to create a steady and elegant image. The third rule of the big miss: when talking, you must be dignified and quiet, virtuous and elegant. Don't look sideways, face natural, back straight, hands in front of the body. If only from the perspective of the assessment, Dunia's big miss style at this time can be said to be quite standard. But after hearing the vulgar words of this big Miss Saito before, no matter who it is, they will feel that at this time she is very fake. From a street shrew to an elegant big miss, Dunia really changed too fast. It's like after getting on a car, the car sped up to 200 kilometers per hour. So Yunyin, who saw all this with her own eyes, was also shocked by her. She could only nod and ask as calmly as possible, Dunia-san, long time no see, are you coming to school today? Yes, I heard that Dori First High School has a simple spirit, so I asked my father to let me transfer here. I hope I didn't cause any trouble to you. Speaking of this, Dunia bowed slightly again. The smile and expression on her face were always very gentle. But when hearing her pure nonsense, Ryudo's mouth couldn't help but twitch. What did she mean by asking her father to transfer schools because she heard that the school was simple and honest, and that there were many talents here? It was clearly because she had beaten up a few hooligans in her original school that she had no choice but to transfer schools, okay? According to Ryudo's understanding in the game, the reason for Dunia's transfer was simple. She had originally studied in a private aristocratic academy. That's right, it was the kind that specialized in nurturing aristocratic young ladies. Not long ago, when Dunia and her friends went out shopping, they met a few hooligans. Those hooligans flirted with them, so Dunia took action. That beating made those hooligans kneel on the ground and kowtow to beg for mercy. It was the kind of beating that was almost stuffed into an urn. However, even though she enjoyed the beating, the school found out about her violent behavior, and Dunia was criticized and punished. Principal, I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you punishing me? Saito classmate, our White Lotus Women's Academy aims to cultivate virtuous girls. How can there be virtuous girls who beat up others on the street? Then a virtuous lady deserves to be taken advantage of? She can't fight back even if she is insulted? If someone is rude, then you can just turn around and leave. Why bother with those hooligans? F*CKU. What? Saito classmate, you just said? I said F*CKU. If being a virtuous lady means I have to swallow my anger, then I don't want to be a virtuous lady. Boom. At the end of the legend, Dunia smashed the table in front of the principal with one punch, scaring the old principal to the point that he lost control of his bladder. Since she had done such an outrageous thing, she definitely couldn't stay in this White Lotus Women's Academy anymore. This was also the reason why Dunia transferred to this first high school. At this moment, while she was pretending to be a virtuous young lady with Yunyin, Dunia was actually thinking this in her heart. So annoying. I just don't want to meet someone I know. Although Yunyin isn't bad, I feel that it's tiring to be with this kind of virtuous young lady. Looking at Yunyin, who was completely different from her, 100% pure and without any pretense, Dunia felt very puzzled. She originally thought that she could escape from that virtuous young lady hell. Who knew that she would meet such a virtuous young lady after transferring? That's too bad. But when she finally noticed Ryudo at the side, Dunia finally curled her lips. Wait, who is this kid? Why is he going to school with Yunyin? Could it be that he was her servant? But what the hell is this blonde? Super tasteless. Although he's a bit handsome, I feel like there's something wrong with his head. Dunia secretly looked at Ryudo and immediately defined him as a super tasteless idiot handsome guy. But on the surface, she still politely smiled at Ryudo and said, Hello, I'm Saito Dunia. Nice to meet you. When he saw the faint contempt in Dunia's eyes, Ryuto grinned. I'm Ryudo Kiryu, Dori First High School and the worst student in Tokyo. Nice to meet you. It had to be said that Ryudo's self-introduction was very simple and very detailed. Ryudo Kiryu? Isn't that the extreme Dao young master? Is it him? Although Dunia had been studying in a boarding school in the suburbs of Tokyo, she should have heard of this name. After all, whether it was on the internet or in other people's conversations, the rumors related to this extreme Dao young master were always very impressive. But because the rumors were somewhat distorted, Dunia always thought that Ryudo was the kind of person who was 8 feet tall, 8 feet waist, fists bigger than a pot, and had a scar like the Big Dipper on his chest and a chivalrous traveler tattoo on his back. She didn't expect that the real person was so much more normal than the rumors. He looked like a normal person. It was really disappointing. After secretly disappointed with Ryudo's overly normal behavior, Dunia pretended to be a young lady and walked with Yunyin to the school gate. It had to be said that at this time, the scene of the two beauties walking together was like a painting. Yunyin was tall, her brows were soft, and her brown hair was tied into a single ponytail. She gave people the feeling of a gentle big sister. Dunia was petite, her facial features were delicate, and her silver-white hair was tied into two ponytails behind her. She gave people the feeling of a cute little sister. From various angles, the two beauties formed a sharp contrast. It could be said that they each had their own characteristics. Such a beautiful scene. The surrounding students naturally couldn't help but look over, but after a glance, most of them quickly turned around and didn't dare to look again. The culprit that caused this situation was naturally Ryuto Kiryu, walking behind Yunyin and Dunia. The culprit, Ryuto Kiryu. It was a really good title. Ryuto liked it when people called him that. But at this time, his attention was actually all on Dunia's exaggerated and bizarre attributes. Why exaggerated and bizarre to describe it? Because Dunia's attributes were like this name. Saitu Dunia age, 15 years old attributes. Wisdom LV1, Vitality LV4, Courage LV3, Insight LV1, Charm LV2. That's right. Dunia's vitality actually reached the level of LV4, International Warrior. Because this little lowly had an extremely rare superhuman physique, or Supergirl physique. Chapter 93. From the day she was born, Dunia was so different. This difference didn't come from her father, who was the world's top martial artist, nor did it come from her mother, who was the world's top dancer. It was completely a God-given talent. From a general medical point of view, a newborn baby's birth weight was mostly 5 to 8 pounds, but Dunia was born with 20 pounds, which made her mother think that she was pregnant with twins or triplets. This abnormal weight didn't mean that the baby was particularly big, but the muscle density in her body was extremely high, which was equivalent to dozens of times the value of an ordinary person. Such a strange symptom, in modern medicine, was called superhuman physique. It was a special physique that could only appear in one out of hundreds of millions of people. Dunia, who grew up with such a special physique, actually contained a terrifying strength in her seemingly slender body. This was also the reason why Dunia's 5 measurements had the strange attribute of LV4 physique. International Warrior. Indeed, if only looking at the physical ability, Dunia was even comparable to Tenmu Ayam. They were both monsters that could crush human bones like candy. However, compared to Ayam's ruthlessness, Dunia had been hiding her special superhuman physique. She had never even used her real strength on humans to avoid causing an irreversible tragedy. Just like when Dunia beat up those hooligans, she had to restrain herself a lot to avoid turning those hooligans into a pile of broken body parts in front of everyone. Good heavens, I don't even know if I can beat her now. She's simply a little monster. While walking behind Dunia, Ryuto looked at her petite body from top to bottom. It seemed that it was hard to imagine where this guy's strange strength came from. Although, Ryuto was just curious about how strong Dunia's body was, so he quietly followed behind and stared at the little girl's body. However, from the third-person perspective of the onlookers, this guy looked like a pervert who had taken a fancy to this cute girl with top-notch looks and was tailing her forcefully. Should we call the police? On the road less than 300 meters away from the main gate of Dori No. 1 High School, countless students who were walking by with their heads lowered or turned their heads away all had the same thought. He looked at Warner, who seemed to be sizing up his target with the typical criminal gaze. Look at the weird uncle swaggering behind the two beauties. She looked at Na's shameless expression as if he didn't feel that he was doing something bad. Therefore, early in the morning, many people had already silently held their phones in their hands, ready to call 110 for emergency help at any time to prevent the two beauties from unfortunately falling into the hands of the devil. Especially the little girl who had just transferred in today. She looked like a pure and cute human doll. If she was bullied by that bastard Ryuto Kiryu, she would definitely cry pitifully. Once they thought of Dunia silently crying after being bullied, the surrounding students couldn't help but feel heartbroken. Of course, if they were told that this pure and cute little girl could punch Ryuto's brain out of his nostrils, no one would believe it. Thus, when the group of students looked at Dunia as if they were looking at the unlucky heroine who had been possessed by something dirty, Dunia herself was very confused. What's going on? Why are they looking at me with a mixture of pity, sadness, and helplessness? Is there something wrong with their heads? For Dunia, who had just transferred to this school, she still couldn't understand how the words Ryuto Kiryo could be equated with scum. Naturally, she didn't understand why she would encounter such gazes. For a moment, Dunia, who was walking, felt uncomfortable all over. After all, she had never experienced being stared at by a group of people so early in the morning. It made her feel as if she was walking to the execution ground. However, in this strange atmosphere where two great beauties were walking in front, followed by a jinxed evil spirit, and surrounded by a group of people who were ready to call the police at any time. Two beautiful figures coincidentally rushed over from the other side of the road, making the already chaotic situation even more chaotic. Young mistress, the atmosphere over there seems to be a little strange. Something's happened. Although they were several dozen meters away, as Kenzaki Colored Glaze's bodyguard, 16 Nights Dancing Costume, Kenzaki's Colored Glaze, was still able to sharply sense the burning air. The students' eyes were filled with uneasiness and panic, and many of them were unconsciously holding their phones in their hands, as if they didn't know where to go. This situation was very similar to when Dancing Costume followed Bunny Ball Sensei to the battlefield to experience the tense atmosphere. Was this a battlefield? Why did the school's entrance become a battlefield so early in the morning? Why were they all holding their phones with guns drawn? Were they all crazy? Just as Dancing Costume was puzzled by the strange situation, she first saw Union Tsukimi and Dunia Saito walking out from the crowd, followed by Ryuto Kiryo. In about a second, she understood everything. This Kamiyoshi's samurai couldn't help but smile bitterly. That seems to be the young mistress of the Saito family. I didn't expect that she would be targeted by Ryuto the moment she transferred over. She's quite unlucky. Unlucky? Hehe, it doesn't seem like anyone is the unlucky one. But when Dancing Costume looked at Dunia with sad eyes, the Colored Glaze on the side snorted and wanted to go around them. If there was anyone in this school who could see through Dunia's true colors, it would be the Colored Glaze. If Dunia was a little fox who had muscles all over her body and was trying to disguise herself with lace, then Luli would be an old fox who had long become a demon and no longer needed to disguise herself. Therefore, how could this young mistress of the Saito family hide from Colored Glaze's eyes? That little brat's pretentious attitude, it was better not to have anything to do with her. Moreover, Union and Ryuto were also here. It was better to leave first. When Colored Glaze noticed that the situation was not right, she wanted to quickly leave without hesitation. However, although her brain was good and her eyes were sharp, the speed of turning around was a bit slow. Ah, isn't that Colored Glaze classmate? Good morning. Before Colored Glaze could sneak away, Union, who was walking not far away, had already noticed her, and then waved and greeted her in front of everyone. Are you kidding me? Why do you have to call me at this time? Can't you see the atmosphere? Natural idiot. After hearing Union's words, Colored Glaze, who originally planned to run, could only awkwardly turn around and wave at the strange trio with a smile, but she couldn't stop cursing in her heart. Chapter 94. When the Colored Glaze also walked over with a smile, all the surrounding students were in an uproar. Good heavens, what was going on this morning? How could they see the dreamy scene of three great beauties gathered together? In this first high school, Union and the Colored Glaze were already quite famous for being the second and third year school belles. At this moment, with the arrival of Dunia, the originally empty position of the first year school belles also had an owner. All of a sudden, the school belles of First High School were gathered together. What's more, these three great beauties each had their own unique characteristics. When they stood together, it was as if flowers bloomed in the surrounding space out of thin air. The air also became fragrant and sweet. It was a pity that in this three flowers gathering beauties, there was an extremely annoying stinky blonde standing in the way. Under the gazes of many people who were angry but did not dare to speak, Ryuto stood there leisurely and even waved at the Colored Glaze. In the eyes of everyone, this scene was as if three roses, lilies, and chrysanthemums had gathered together to compete for beauty, but there was a big mouth man-eating flower beside them that was ready to make a move. What kind of broken thing was this? If an artist dared to draw such a picture of hell, then that artist would definitely be dragged out and drowned in a pig cage. Of course, as the big mouth man-eating flower, Ryudo naturally did not react to the angry gazes of the others. He was only worried about what might happen in a while. Well, the colored glaze also came. They wouldn't quarrel on the spot, would they? When Ryudo saw Yunyin call the colored glaze over, he couldn't help but smile bitterly, as if he had already predicted what would happen next. Among the three female leads, Yunyin was a natural good person and lubricant for the team, so she could get along with anyone. However, the attributes and personalities of the other two were seriously incompatible. After all, Colored Glaze was a strategist while Dunia was a general. One relied on intelligence, while the other relied on strength. In the first place, it was easy for one to get along with the other, not to mention that Dunia was willful and liked to put on an act. Colored Glaze could see through her at a glance, so it would be strange if they got along well. On the other hand, Dunia was not used to seeing Colored Glaze, who was a classic lady from every angle. She also felt that Colored Glaze was too fake, and she was fake from head to toe. Therefore, when the two of them were about to meet, this was what they were thinking. Colored Glaze, humph, what a fake young lady. It's a pity that you're not good enough at pretending. You don't know what you're talking about. Dunia, humph, this woman is obviously scheming. She's definitely not a good person. However, although both of them thought so, they naturally couldn't openly express their disgust in public. Therefore, Colored Glaze walked up to Dunia and said with a perfect smile, "Hello, Dunia-san. Nice to meet you. I'm Kenzaki Colored Glaze. Nice to meet you." Dunia also covered her mouth and pretended to be surprised as she replied, "Ah, are you Colored Glaze-san? I've heard so much about you. I didn't expect to meet you here." "Dunia-san, you're new here. If you need any help, please don't hesitate to ask. No need to be polite. Is that so? Thank you very much. I just transferred here and felt a little nervous, but with Colored Glaze-san and Yunyin-san here, there's nothing to be afraid of." Hee. Humph, humph, humph. What's going on? Why do I feel like they're not having a normal conversation? On the surface, Colored Glaze and Dunia's conversation didn't seem like there was anything wrong with it. It was just normal social talk. However, some of the more sensitive students around them also keenly felt the strange atmosphere that pervaded their bodies. How should they describe this feeling? It was just like in a palace drama. The Empress and the new concubine clearly didn't like each other and wanted to strangle each other, but they had to pretend to be harmonious in front of the Emperor. And that Emperor was this Ryuto-sama. When he thought about how the three beauties in front of him were all part of his harem, Ryudo felt like he was really awesome. Thus, he couldn't help but put his hands on his waist and puffed out his chest. He stood beside the three beauties and put on an arrogant posture that said, "Look, this is my harem." However, in the eyes of others, this posture was, "Are you crazy? The three beauties are standing together and chatting. Why is a monster like you posing on the side?" Fortunately, this degree of visual torture quickly passed. Under Union's lead, Dunia and Colored Glaze also pretended to chat as they walked into the school. That morning, the first High BBS forum naturally erupted into an intense vortex of posts. With the transfer of the first-year beauty Saito to Gunia, Dori First High School finally had its own school beauty Miyako. At the same time, because of Dunia's prominent identity, in just a few short hours, her background was posted on the forum. Most people had a preliminary understanding of this ancient martial arts family's young miss. Of course, the things that happened in the White Lotus Girls Academy before were not exposed. After all, it was a semi-closed aristocratic girls' academy. The things inside rarely spread to the outside. Originally, Ryudo didn't have any thoughts about Dunia's transfer for the time being. At most, he planned to talk to her when he was free. Who knew that when he was eating with Colored Glaze at noon, Ryudo unexpectedly heard new information. Colored Glaze picked up a cup of tea, took a sip gracefully, and said inadvertently, "Recently, the Saitu Guild Hall and the Heavenly Eye Group seem to be in conflict. The conflict between the two sides is intensifying." "What? There's such a thing?" Hearing this, Ryudo put down the chopsticks in his hand and asked in a surprised tone. In the third storyline of the original work, the Saitu Guild Hall and the Heavenly Eye Group did frequently have conflicts in the middle and later stages, but it was still early. Why did these two forces suddenly fight when it was still early? It is said that it was caused by an Augusta Westland AW-101 helicopter. Helicopter? Augusta Westland AW-101? When Ryudo heard this model, he couldn't help but touch his head, because he seemed to be familiar with this model. According to Colored Glaze, about a week ago, there was a helicopter belonging to the Heavenly Eye group flying randomly in Yodo. Just when the helicopter was flying at a low altitude, the wind pressure shattered the glass of a Saitu martial arts hall, and the glass accidentally scratched the face of the curator's wife. Therefore, the curator angrily called a group of people to chase after the plane. When the plane landed at a maintenance point in the suburbs to resupply, they caught the pilot, beat him up, and smashed the plane into pieces. Although I don't know why the helicopter was sent, the helicopter was smashed, and the pilot was severely disabled. Heavenly Eye Iam was said to be furious, so they turned around to deal with the Saitu Martial Arts Hall. Why do you have this expression? After Colored Glaze explained the conflict between the Heavenly Eye group and the Saitu Guild Hall, she saw a strange expression on Ryudo's face, so she couldn't help but ask in confusion. Chapter 95. It's nothing. I just feel that the people from the Saitu Guild Hall are really fierce. That's right. Although they're just a private organization, they have a lot of connections in the political and business circles. They also have hundreds of thousands of disciples in the country. They're quite powerful. With Colored Glaze's intelligence gathering and leadership ability, she naturally knew how deep the background of the private organization, Saitu Martial Arts Hall, was. The ancestors of that group of martial artists were professional martial artists who were responsible for protecting the daimyo and senior officials. Although they left the officialdom in modern times to form their own organization, they still maintained a deep relationship with various organizations. It was not surprising that such a large force dared to challenge the Heavenly Eye group, although Colored Glaze did not think that they could deal with Heavenly Eye Iam. After all, in Colored Glaze's view, the Saitu Guild Hall belonged to the stubborn conservative group. Although they were powerful, their thinking was rigid, and they still maintained their ancient style in this era. Ancient style and rigid thinking. No matter how strong such a force was, in Iam's eyes, it was no different from a pile of unrecyclable garbage. If Iam really wanted to do something to the Saitu Guild Hall, her various vicious methods were definitely unimaginable to the conservative group of martial artists. They could not deal with it, and the Saitu family would inevitably suffer some losses. However, compared to Colored Glaze's thoughts, Ryudo was thinking about another thing at this time, and that was the origin of the Saitu Guild Hall, beating up the Heavenly Eye group's pilot and angrily dismantling the Augusta Westland AW-101 helicopter. First of all, this special event absolutely did not happen in Red Album 2. No one survived. The only reason why it happened was because of Ryudo's survival. Because Ryudo did not die in the Tokyo Bay warehouse, Iam sent people to the school to catch him in a helicopter. Augusta Westland AW-101 was the helicopter that kidnapped Ryudo to the unrestrained Sky Tower. At the same time, because Ryudo had backtracked and killed the mercenaries sent to capture him, the only survivor of the helicopter pilot could only escape in a sorry state. Perhaps due to the severe psychological pressure caused by the failure to complete the mission, the driver somehow lost his mind and broke the glass of the Saitu clubhouse. The broken glass cut the curator's wife's face. As a result, the pilot was beaten up and the plane was torn to pieces, causing the Tianmu group and the Saito Club to fall out in advance. Alright, the two organizations that had been minding their own business for the time being actually started fighting because of me. What a huge butterfly reaction. After understanding everything, Ryudo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Obviously, because he was alive and kicking, the timeline of this game world was rapidly changing. But fortunately, the Saito Club angered Iam, which caused Iam to temporarily look away from Ryudo. Before, Ryudo was wondering why no one came to mess with him in this week. Now it seemed that Iam had focused her attention on the Saito Club. Suddenly, Ryudo also realized why the driver and bodyguard who escorted Dunya to school this morning was so nervous. Miss, remember to press the emergency contact button immediately if there is anything. We will rush in to protect you at any time. From the words of the bodyguard, it should be that Dunya's father knew that the Tianmu group might play some dirty tricks, such as kidnapping Dunya. so he strengthened her security work and alert level. But no matter what, this was a matter between the two big forces for the time being. It was not Ryudo's turn to care for the time being. Anyway, he still had to eat and play. He slept in the familiar second class B to replenish his energy and wait for the arrival of the night. Around 8:00 that night, in the nightfall of Tokyo, a car sped across the spacious road. The person driving in front was Ryudo's right-hand man, Narukai Otani, and their destination was Union's home. The Tsutsumiri-Betsuin, where the miss of the Tsutsumiri-Betsuin lived, was located in the port area of Tokyo. It was very close to Doridaichi High School. It was a distance that could be reached quickly by walking, but she would still be escorted by an exclusive vehicle every day. Not long after, the black car slowly drove into the wealthy area filled with mansions and courtyards. It stopped half a street away from the Tsutsumiri-Betsuin. When they were nearby, Long Do got out of the car and slowly walked over, sticking close to the wall like a thief. According to the map given by Union, I should wait for her here? When he came to the side of the Tsutsumiri-Betsuin, near an inconspicuous iron fence, Ryudo looked at the map on his phone again and confirmed that there was no problem with the location to pick up Union. According to the discussion with Union today, she would sneak out of here at around 8:30, get in Ryudo's car, and go to the Ginza Mokome to find Furamaki Sotaro for the assessment. Speaking of which, can senior sister Union really come out of here? The fence is 3 meters high. Looking at the fence that was so high that even he didn't dare to say that he could casually climb over it, and there were spikes protecting it, Ryudo couldn't help but feel a little doubtful. But after he waited for a few minutes, a graceful figure quietly ran towards him, accompanied by the cool night breeze. It was senior sister Yun-Yen. However, she wasn't wearing her usual uniform. Instead, she was wearing sportswear that made it easier for her to move around. Furthermore, her cloud-like soft brown hair was tied into a refreshing ponytail. When Long Do saw senior sister Yun-Yen, he felt as if spring had arrived. It was as if the air around him had become fresher. Yun-Yen also ran to the fence under Ryudo's gaze, waved and smiled. Sorry, did you wait long? Looking at her cheerful appearance, she was like a girl who sneaked out to go on a date with her boyfriend. This made Ryudo nod his head first, then quickly reacted and shook his head. It's okay, I just got here. How do you plan to get out of here? Actually, there is a bit of a problem with the fence. Yun-Yen smiled and came to the edge of the fence. She stretched out her hand and pushed one of the seemingly solid but actually loose railings, pushing out a gap of about 30 centimeters. Then she squeezed her soft body toward the gap, twisting left and right, and slowly squeezing out of the gap. Originally, Yun-Yen's escape method was not a problem. The problem was, well, she had a good figure, and she was wearing a tight-fitting sportswear. So when she squeezed through the railing, the two soft and towering slimes in front of Yun-Yen's chest showed a wonderful shape under the pressure of the railing. Especially when the slime on the right squeezed through the railing, and together with the slime on the left, the cylindrical railing was sandwiched between the two peaks. This scene was simply a killer move for men. Okay, Ryudo classmate, let's go. What's wrong with you? After Yun-Yen finally squeezed her body out, she looked at Ryudo, who was squatting on the ground with his hands covering his face. She seemed to be a little puzzled by his sudden change. No, it's nothing, just a little low blood sugar. Wasn't this too natural? Was this person trying to murder for money? After a few seconds, Ryudo could not help but sigh, quickly stood up and walked toward the car with Yun-Yen. Chapter 96. The Ginza at night exuded a charming and colorful light. Red, green, yellow, and colorful, all kinds of signs competed with each other at the intersection, and the door to attract customers was also constantly wandering in the crowd. Wow, is this the entertainment street at night? It looks so special. Yun-Yen, who was sitting in the back seat with Ryudo, excitedly looked at the scene she had never seen before, and her pretty face almost stuck to the window. In the past many years of life, Yun-Yen had never been allowed to go shopping at night, let alone come to this kind of place, so it was not difficult to understand why she would feel excited. When they came to the alley where they learned from Furamaki, Ryudo ordered, "Narukai, stop here." Second generation head, this area is full of fish and dragons. If you want to take Miss Yunyin with you, it's best to disguise yourself. Before getting out of the car, Narukai looked at Yunyin's inexperienced appearance and couldn't help but remind her. Insiders clearly knew that Tokyo at night was a devil's den, especially in the streets and alleys. No one could guarantee what ghosts they would encounter at the corner. Yunyin, who wore sportswear, had pure eyes and an innocent expression, was definitely the kind of person who was most likely to get into trouble in Tokyo's devil's den at night. I know. Yunyin, come and put this on. Ryudo was naturally very clear about this kind of thing. So before getting out of the car, he deliberately took out a mask and a hat and handed it over. The mask could cover most of Yunyin's appearance, and the hat could also stuff all the cloud-like soft hair, so it was almost foolproof. Wow, this is really fresh. After covering most of her peerless appearance and temperament, Yunyin followed Ryuto into the depths of the alley. Yunyin looked around at the eerie alleys on both sides. It was her first time here, and she couldn't help but look around curiously. Ryuto taught him as he walked. Just turn your eyes left and right and observe your surroundings. Don't move your head around. If you reveal that you're a novice in the dark alley, you'll be targeted easily at night. Is that so? Also, it's best to stick your hands into the bag as much as possible and pretend that you're ready to grab something. I see. This is common knowledge in the underground world. As Yunyin followed Ryudo through the alleys, she quickly wrote down the underground knowledge that might be useful for her writing. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the empty space in the alley where Ryudo and Furamaki had learned Furamaki-style martial arts. At this moment, Furamaki Sotaro seemed to have been waiting here for a long time. His back was facing the entrance of the alley, and his hands were behind his back. He was posing like an otherworldly expert. If I didn't come, he wouldn't have planned to stand like this for the whole night, right? Seeing Furamaki addicted to showing off, Ryudo couldn't help but have the worst thoughts. After hearing Ryudo's footsteps, Furamaki, who was dozing off with his back facing Ryudo, immediately said without turning his head, "You're here?" "Uh-huh, I'm here. Since you can come here, it means that you must be very confident in yourself. You can. Hey, who is this?" Originally, Taro Gu-mu had intended to make a dashing turn around halfway through his speech to show off his master's lofty attitude in front of Ryudo. However, the moment he turned around, he was stunned. Because when he turned around halfway, he saw a slim figure standing beside Ryuto. "Looks like a girl? Are you kidding me? It's the middle of the night, and you brought a girl out to participate in the martial arts exam?" As if she felt Furamaki Sotaro's surprise, Yunyin also quickly smiled and said, "Master Furamaki, hello. My name is Yunyin Tsukimi. I'm very interested in the martial arts exam, so I asked Ryudo classmate to bring me along. I hope I won't disturb you too much." As Yunyin spoke, she bowed to Furamaki. Her etiquette was flawless, and coupled with her god-level charm, it made it impossible for people to speak ill of her. This woman is very dangerous. Yunyin had the same level of charm as I am. If used properly, it was not impossible for her to become a demoness that could bring disaster to a country. Furamaki Sotaro saw through this at a glance. After realizing that this woman was not simple, the old man walked over to Ryuto, who was standing next to him, and whispered seriously in his ear, "You have a girlfriend? We're just friends, or temporarily just friends. Let me give you a word of advice. The water here is too deep. You may not be able to grasp it." Although Furamaki Sotaro's words sounded like he was driving an old car, in fact, he was sincerely reminding his back. After all, being together with Yunyin would really lead to countless troubles. However, Ryudo replied with a smile, "It's okay. I don't need these 100 or 200 troubles. I'll just deal with whatever comes my way." "You're really brave, but I don't know if your strength is worthy of your courage." After understanding Ryudo's determination, Sotaro took 2 steps back and said in a voice that even Yunyin could hear, Could it be that it's about to start?" After feeling the seriousness that quickly spread out from Sotaro's body, Yunyin couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. She looked at the master and disciple nervously and excitedly. Ryudo also casually rolled up the sleeves of his shirt and asked faintly, "Is it starting here? My opponent is you?" "No, your opponent is not here. It's in the Sai River Plain Underground Fighting Arena. The Sai River Plain Underground Fighting Arena? When he heard this familiar name, Ryudo's eyebrows slightly raised. Not long ago, when he was talking with Furamaki Sotaro about the past of his father Kazuma, he once talked about how Kazuma once swept the largest underground fighting arena in Tokyo. And the fighting arena that Kazuma set the record of 100 wins and no losses was called the Sai River Plain Underground Fighting Arena. So that's how it is. Furamaki wants me to challenge the underground fighting world that Kazuma's father once swept? Ryudo once heard that there were some underground non-formal fighting competitions in Tokyo. There were no rules, no sects, as long as no weapons were used. It was a primitive, bloody fighting. Rather than a fighting competition, this kind of competition was more like a slaughter. Because there were no rules, the contestants often went up alive and came down dead. So those who would appear in these competitions were either retired fighters from the surface world, or rogues, fugitives, mercenaries, or similar outlaws. However, the first trial that Furamaki Sotaro gave Ryudo was to challenge the Sai River Plain Underground Fighting Arena, where people died every day, and defeat the opponent in the sea-level competition. Chapter 97. Racing River Plains Underground Fighting Arena. It's not hard to understand the fighting arena, but what kind of place is Racing River Plain? Is there such a street in Tokyo? It doesn't sound very auspicious. After listening to the trial conditions of the old man Furamaki, Yunyan first nodded and then asked doubtfully. In ancient mythological records, after people died, they would go to the River of Three Roads and ride the Death God's boat from the shore to the opposite shore. And this shore area where the Death God's boat was called Saihara. In other words, this place was the last stop on the way to the other shore and the closest place to the underworld. Such an inauspicious name. It was hard to imagine who would use this name to name an area. Otherwise, if you took a taxi home at night and the taxi driver asked you where you lived and you replied, "Go to Saihara," you would scare the driver to death and think there was a ghost. But in fact, Saihara was a mysterious place that only a few people in Tokyo knew about. It was equivalent to an urban legend. It was said that somewhere in Tokyo's West Park, there was an abandoned subway station. Because of the surrounding expansion, the subway station was surrounded in the gap between the public toilet and the park, but for some reason, it was not completely demolished. Therefore, the homeless who often wandered in the park occupied this place. They occupied this abandoned area that was said to be no less than the West Park itself. And under the leadership of the Tokyo homeless boss, Saihara Merchant, the homeless transformed this place into an underground amusement park for the rich. It was said that after walking into the abandoned subway entrance, what greeted the eyes was a bustling scene like an ancient red light street. The narrow road of only about 10 meters was paved with a bright red carpet. Red oil paper umbrellas were placed on the ground every few meters, exuding an antique atmosphere. Small pink lanterns were hung at the door of the wooden houses built on both sides. From the outside, one could see that inside the half-covered room, there were many women wearing kabuki costumes and heavy makeup. If one wanted to accurately describe the style of this Saihara underground street district, it was as if the customs of the Edo period hundreds of years ago were presented, giving people a feeling of time and space reversal. However, most of the people walking on this street were wearing masks and expensive suits. They looked like rich men with greasy hair and powdered faces. This made people jump out of the fun of the Edo period and return to the dirtier modern world. Was this the legendary Saiji River original underground street district? The construction was quite decent. Not long after, Long Do and Yun Yen walked through many small alleys under the lead of Taro Gu Mu. In the end, they even went around a public toilet and a park. Finally, they passed through the abandoned subway and arrived here. Even Ryudo was dazzled by the magnificent underground world. Yun Yen was so excited that she almost screamed. She stretched out her trembling hand and pointed at a red oil paper umbrella in the corner not far away. There was a bed under the umbrella. Suddenly, Yun Yen asked in an excited tone, "Ryudo, what is that for?" "This should be for passers-by to rest, right?" Long Do scratched his head and said uncertainly, "Wow, I have never seen a roadside rest area like this. Ryudo, come and sit." Therefore, Yun Yin skipped towards the red paper umbrella. She even pulled Long Do to sit down with her. She wanted to take out her phone and take a beautiful picture of them first. However, old Master Gu Mu walked over and reminded her with a smile, "Indeed, it's for passers-by to rest. However, it's not an ordinary rest. It's for the wanderers and customers of the Edo period to do business." You girls and guests? Hearing this, Long Do was so scared that his scalp went numb. However, Yun Yin still asked curiously, "What do wanderers do? Perform?" "Not perform, but sell their bodies." Sell their bodies? Wanderers are known as prostitutes in ancient times. They sometimes have sex with customers under the red oil paper umbrella by the roadside to attract more customers to continue their business. Sell their bodies? Prostitutes? Have sex? Do business? Suddenly, Yun Yin looked at the red oil paper umbrella above her head, then looked at herself and Ryudo sitting on the bed. Her brain couldn't process such interesting information in a short time. 3 seconds later, Yun Yin blushed and quickly pulled Ryudo up from the bed. At the same time, she completely deleted the photo in her phone. Seeing her embarrassed state, Ryudo couldn't help but ask with a smile, "Yun Yin, are you okay?" I'm okay, but this is too strange. On the side of the street? Don't they feel embarrassed?" Actually, Yun Yin didn't know about the existence of the wanderer profession, but the roadside mattress and the oil paper umbrella were still beyond her knowledge. "Well, it's good that you don't understand, because it just means that your life is very happy." Facing Yun Yin's incredulous question, Ryudo patted her on the shoulder and explained with a smile. For a lady like her who was born in a privileged family and never had to worry about money, let alone starving, selling her body for money was obviously a very shameful thing. But for those who were abandoned on the side of the road at birth and had nothing but their own body, they were already used to the disdainful transaction in the eyes of ordinary people. In the face of the threat of survival, dignity, they were worthless. This was not only the world of the wanderers, but also the world of those who were not accepted by society, such as extreme Taoists. Everyone living in the underground world had already done their best to survive, and there was absolutely no extra time to care about other things. There was no doubt that such a world was abnormal, but it did exist, not only in the Edo period, but even in this glamorous modern society, it still existed. After listening to Ryudo's explanation, Yun Yin fell into silence for a while. It wasn't that she didn't understand Ryudo's words, but the more she understood, the more she found that she didn't seem to understand anything. Just as Ryudo said, Yun Yin's life was very happy. So she didn't experience the hardships of life and didn't experience the bitterness of bowing down for 5 buckets of rice. Perhaps it was because of this ungrounded life experience that caused Yun Yan's novel to be completely out of the ordinary. It gave the reader the feeling of a heavenly steed soaring across the sky, flying up into the atmosphere, and then hovering between the sun and Mars. Therefore, for Yun Yin, this trip to the Sai River Plain did indeed give her a lot of knowledge. Especially when they arrived at the underground fighting arena where a huge iron cage that looked like a coliseum was placed in the middle. Many rich people were drinking and chatting around it while excitedly cheering for the 2 brawny men in the iron cage, the original fighting arena of the Sai River. Chapter 98. What the hell is this place? When Yun Yin followed Ryudo and Sotaro into this dome building that wasn't particularly big, but the atmosphere was much more lively than the outside. Her entire body was almost immobilized by the surging hot wind. The interior of this Sai River fighting arena was like a never-ending lively party. There was never a lack of fierce roars, blood flying all over the sky, the sound of bones breaking, and the rich businessmen, drinks, and women around the round tables. This was a venue that was about half the size of a football field. In the middle of the venue, there was a 10-meter-wide iron cage. 2 strong men were fighting with their lives on the line. One of the strong men was wearing a wrestler's tight suit. He was desperately trying to hug his opponent and smash him to the ground. But his opponent assumed a very standard boxing posture, dodging with nimble steps while landing heavy punches on the wrestler's body from various angles. When Yun Yin had just walked into the arena, she happened to see the wrestler being punched in the cheek by his opponent. A stream of blood flew out along with a broken tooth. This wasn't a movie or a performance. It was a real brawl, or rather a fight. Although Yun had just roughly heard about the situation here, but when she really saw such a tragic match, she was still shocked to the point that her legs went numb. Of course, other than Yun, who was a newbie, the audience sitting around the cage were roaring excitedly. Beautifully done. Little Tyson, quickly beat that guy's brains out. Stand up and fight back, demon muscle man. I have bet $1 million on you. Even if you die, you have to win, bastard. Hit him. Hit him. Not intense enough. Hit him harder. At this moment, there were no more than 100 people sitting around the round tables. However, the roars and auras of these 100 people were like that of an army with thousands of men and horses. Rich people who had nowhere to spend their money, so they wanted to stimulate to the end. Perverts who couldn't be satisfied in their daily lives and needed to feel their existence through bloody stimulation. There were roaming girls and bodyguards who served these customers, as well as underground warriors who killed each other on the field, exchanging their lives for rewards. The place where these strange guests gathered was the deepest place in the Sai River field. It was only one step away from the underworld, the death arena. Yun's body couldn't help but tremble when she saw such a place where the sins and desires of human beings were displayed so blatantly. But just when she couldn't stand, Ryudo reached out and held her trembling hand. After holding Yun's hand, Ryudo turned his head and gently whispered in her ear, "Don't worry, with me here, you don't have to be afraid of anything." Ahem, I'm not afraid. Suddenly, Yun also took a deep breath and responded stubbornly. But even so, she didn't let go of Ryudo's hand. Obviously, she was still a little uncomfortable with this kind of illegal fighting arena and the surrounding chaotic scene. When Yun barely calmed down, Furamaki Sotaro on the side said to Ryudo, "What do you think of the strength of the two guys in the ring?" "Very average. It's the standard of an ordinary competition in the surface world. Not a master." It wasn't that Ryudo looked down on the fighters in the surface world, but in fact, in this arena where there were no rules, the fighters in the surface world had a huge inherent disadvantage. The disadvantage was that they only knew how to fight and not kill. If Ryudo understood correctly, the rules of the Sai River field were that there were no rules. As long as they didn't bring weapons, they could do anything. Even if it was stabbing eyes, kicking, or biting the throat, there was no problem. In this case, it was normal for the fighters who were used to fighting in the surface world to lose to the criminal killers who were not as strong as them. After all, the awareness and habits of the two sides when fighting were completely different. The fighters were aiming to win the game, while the criminal killers were aiming to kill. That's right, now it's only a sea-level competition, so the strength of both sides is not very strong, and the stakes and bounties are not very high. Sea-level, then there are higher, B-level, and A-level ? Yes, your father Kazuma was an A-level here in the past, and he was also the reigning champion. He was also the first person in history to achieve the achievement of undefeated in 100 battles. Undefeated in 100 battles. In such a place with stronger opponents, he had never lost. Seeing the increasingly ferocious battle on the stage, where both sides had already fought until their faces were covered in blood, Long Do couldn't help but imagine the heroic appearance of the one horse when he fought here one after another. He was really an iron-blooded man, a tough guy in a cage, worthy of being the king of 100 battles in the underground arena. So Ryudo couldn't help but laugh. He asked with a smile, "Speaking of which, if you fight here, how much money do you get after winning?" "If it's C-level, it's 10 million, B-level, it's 30 million. If it's A-level, the winner can get 1/10 of the total gambling pool, at least over 100 million. What if I bet on myself to win?" Of course it's not allowed. The fighters are not allowed to participate in any form of betting, even if it's on behalf of friends or relatives. If it's found out, you will be immediately expelled and permanently disqualified. Well, it's really strict. Is it to prevent fake matches? In this case, it should be impossible to make a lot of money by betting on yourself, but it's not bad to make some pocket money by winning the competition and getting a bonus. Gotcha. Just when Ryudo nodded, understanding that he understood the rules here, there was a sudden crisp sound of bones cracking and miserable screams from the cage ring. Ah, I admit defeat. I admit defeat. Ryuto looked towards the ring, only to see that the boxer, nicknamed Little Tyson, who had been attacking ferociously, was rolling on the ground while hugging his leg. Below his knee, his leg was in a twisted shape. It didn't look like a human leg, but more like a thick fried dough twist. It was obvious that his opponent used some sort of joint lock to break his knee. But even though the boxer had already shouted to admit defeat, the wrestler who had been beaten black and blue still jumped up mercilessly. That sturdy body that weighed at least 200 kilograms was suddenly pressed down on him. Kaboom! Accompanied by a loud bang, Little Tyson, who was crushed by the jump, spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted, announcing the official end of the match. Is that person still alive? Seeing the cage slowly rise and the medical team carrying Little Tyson away for treatment, Yunyan asked uneasily, "That's none of our business, kid. Go over there and register as a fighter, then request for a last-minute extra match." After watching the thrilling match, Furamaki Sotaro pointed at another tunnel not far away, indicating to Ryuto that it was time for him to go on stage. Chapter 99. Ryuto, are you really going to fight? Fighting in that kind of place? Hearing this, Yunyan realized that they were not here for sightseeing. Ryuto was also going to fight. But when she saw the extremely bloody fight just now, Yunyan quickly pulled Ryuto's clothes, as if she wanted to stop him from doing something stupid. "Don't be nervous. Those stinky fish and shrimps can't even touch a strand of my hair. You just sit here and admire my heroic appearance." Long Do smiled as he led senior sister Yunyan to an empty table and arranged for her to sit down. He then called for some maids to prepare some wine and food. In the end, Long Do invited Old Master Gu Mu to sit here and watch over senior sister Yunyan. Then, he walked towards the contestant passage alone. When he entered the contestant passage, a woman in a professional uniform bowed and asked, "Hello, what can I do for you?" "I want to register as a contestant of the battle arena, and I want to fight immediately." "No problem. Please come here to register your personal information." It seemed that she had seen this kind of unexpected situation many times. The waiter also quickly led Ryuto to register the contestant. But when she saw the name that Ryuto filled in the registration form, the waiter couldn't help but widen her eyes. "Your name is Ryuto Kiryu?"
Yes.
"I see. I understand. Please wait in the lounge over there." When Ryuto walked toward the lounge, the information he just filled in was quickly sent to the owner of the battle arena. "So that's the case. Ryuto Kiryu, the son of that guy, actually wants to register as a contestant." Looking at the registration form in his hand, the fat middle-aged man couldn't help but show a nostalgic expression. As everyone knew, the area of Sai River Plain was established by a homeless king named Sai Hana Merchant. At first, he just hired homeless people to collect and sell information, but later, he developed into the king of information in Tokyo. It was said that there was nothing in Tokyo that he didn't know. Of course, if one wanted to buy some kind of information, the price one had to pay was quite shocking. However, from the outside, the florist looked like an ordinary middle-aged gambler. He was wearing a jacket with the word Sparrow printed on it and 2 large gold chains hanging in front of his chest. At first glance, one could tell that he was not a decent person. "Boss, is he the real deal?" At this time, a strong black man who handed over the registration form stuttered. This burly black man looked like a tiger with a tiger head and a tiger brain. However, the sturdy muscles on his body and the countless scars on his face warned others that this guy was not an easy opponent to deal with. "Of course it's the real deal. Not long ago, when I got the news that he came in, I thought that this kid was here to have some fun. Who knew that he would give me such a big surprise?" For the flower merchant who had the lifeline of intelligence, he already knew that Ryuto, Yunyan, and Sotaro had come here together. But the flower merchant didn't think that a mere 16 years old high school student would have the guts to sign up for this battle arena competition. "The younger generation will surpass us in time. As expected of your son, Kazuma." The flower merchant turned his head and looked at the photo on the wall. The man in the photo was holding up a golden belt that represented the king. This was the highest honor that the king of the underground battle arena received after defeating 100 opponents. So the flower merchant quickly picked up the microphone and said to the staff, "Immediately arrange for him to participate in the C-class promotion competition. The sooner the better." "Yes, boss." Following the response from the other side of the microphone, Ryudo's first match, or Group 1, was in the midst of preparations. "What? My match is 3 consecutive matches? I have to defeat 3 opponents in a row?" When he heard the staff's explanation, Ryudo seemed a little surprised. "Yes, because this is the C-class promotion competition. You only need to win these 3 matches to advance to the B-class." "Then if I win these 3 matches, will there be a bonus?" "Of course there will be, a total of 30 million yen. But the premise is that you have to win until the end." "Very good. I'm ready to go at any time." Although it was a bit strange that he could participate in the promotion competition as soon as he came to the battle arena, Ryudo could understand the reason. After all, he was the son of the king of the battle arena, Kazuma Tong. From the perspective of the owner, it was understandable that he was given some preferential treatment. Of course, the promotion competition as soon as he came in could be considered as preferential treatment, or it could be considered as another kind of test. But since the owner here thinks so highly of me, then I won't be polite with the 30 million reward. In this fierce atmosphere, 5 minutes later, Ryudo was invited to the contestant channel, and he walked alone to the center of the ring. As his figure gradually appeared in the ring, the host on top of the stage excitedly shouted, "Ladies and gentlemen, now there is a fighter who signed up at the last minute, and his identity is absolutely unimaginable." 10 years ago, an undefeated king of the battle arena returned triumphantly with a golden belt. 10 years later, his son came to inherit his father's position. Let us use the warmest cheers to welcome tonight's promotion competition challenger, the legendary son, Kazuma Tong Ryudo. When this name was shouted by the host, there was a burst of fierce cheers around the ring like a landslide and a tsunami. The heat wave was 100 times more intense than before, as if it was going to lift the round ceiling. Almost everyone at the same time focused their eyes on the young figure who was stepping on the ring and stood up crazily and shouted, "Really? Is it really him? The legendary second generation of the Rulon group, Ryuto Kiryu?" Seeing the yellow hair on the signboard and the steps that didn't recognize anyone, many people who obviously knew Ryudo immediately cheered while quickly calling their relatives and friends to come and watch this game that might be recorded in history. After all, this was a big news for the entire Sai River Plain, and it might also mean that a new legend was about to start tonight. However, when Ryudo came to the ring, his opponent had already been waiting there for a long time. Seeing the 2 contestants on the ring, the host also shouted passionately, and the first contestant who is responsible for facing the legendary son in this 3 consecutive matches is the Brazilian wrestler who just won a competition, nicknamed Devil Muscle Man, Ivan Bourne. At the other end of the ring, the wrestler Devil Muscle Man, whose face was still a little swollen but looked good, and who had just crippled an opponent's leg, showed a fierce expression to Ryudo. Chapter 100. Demon Muscleman Evan Bourne was one of the more famous sea-level fighters in the Sai River original arena. He was said to have worked as a professional wrestler in Brazil before, but he was expelled from professional wrestling because of his misdeeds in the arena. He traveled to many countries and finally came to this underground arena to make a living. In the last battle, this devilish muscle man had successfully broken the leg of the underground boxer, cruelly obtaining the final victory. Although he had just finished a game, Evan Bourne signed up immediately when he heard that there was a new promotion match. After all, in the promotion match, if the contestant on the receiving side won, he would get double the prize money, which was a full 20 million. Hee, as long as I can get rid of this kid, I can get 20 million. It's really worth it. Plus the bonus I saved before, as long as I win this game, I can go back to my hometown and get married. Seeing Ryudo's figure gradually walking toward the ring, Evan Bourne's eyes flashed with a hint of joy. He seemed to see the leisurely life of his wife and children. After all, no matter how loud the audience cheered for Ryudo, no matter how big the background introduced by the host was, Today's Ryudo looked at most like a handsome blonde high school student from the outside. Such a blonde punk could scare ordinary people. But in the underground world, no matter how much he boasted, he couldn't be related to the word powerhouse at all. The height and body shape of 16 years old completely reflected the unique thin feeling of a teenager. Especially when he stood with the tall Evanborn. The comparison between the two sides was more like an adult beating a child. It was completely bullying. He's just a teenage bean sprout, and he dares to come up to the competition. This 20 million is really easy to earn. At this moment, the other players watching the game in the lounge couldn't help but complain. They seemed to regret that they signed up late. Rumble. When the host quickly left the arena, the iron cage that was originally hanging above slowly fell down. Evanborn's face had a greedy smile, and at the same time, he was already imagining his victory in his mind. "All right, what kind of pose should I make after I win? Do push-ups on this bean sprout's head?" Or perhaps he would grab him by the ankle and raise him up to dry him in the sun. Before the countdown began, in addition to Evanborn, the audience sitting around the round tables had already used the betting machines in their hands to silently express their support for this demon muscle man. Furamaki Sotaro, who was sitting at the table, looked at the monitor and said, 182 to 117? It seems like I've been underestimated. Yunyan also looked up at the monitor that showed 182, 117 and asked in confusion, "Master Furamaki, what does that mean?" "It's the betting odds for both sides. If you bet on Ryudo winning, it's 182, and if you bet on the wrestler, it's 117. This means that those who bet on the wrestler winning are more one-sided." How could that be? Don't tell me everyone is so pessimistic. Originally, Yunyan wanted to say, "Don't tell me everyone is so pessimistic about Ryudo." But before she could finish speaking, she looked into the iron cage and saw Long Do and Ivanburn standing opposite each other like an adult and a child. She instantly understood the thoughts of the people who had placed their bets. Indeed, even if Ryudo came with the title of Legendary Child, he was too young after all. Even Kirishima Kazuma, who was known as the Underground War God, was almost 30 years old when he became famous here. A man in his 30s was at the peak of his life in terms of physical ability, skills, experience, and other aspects. But a 16-year-old boy was still in the growth period, or even just at the beginning of the growth period. How could such a boy beat those experienced underground fighters? Therefore, although the surrounding audience was very excited about Ryudo's participation, there were very few people who really dared to bet on him winning. It could be said that he was a dark horse. Just when Yunyan thought of this, the host who left the iron cage had already shouted with the microphone, "Countdown begins. 3, 2. Is it starting? Is he really going to fight with that strong man?" Looking at Ryuto in the iron cage with the devil muscle man, Yunyan only felt that her heart was about to jump to her throat. 1. Match begins. "No, I don't dare to look." Just as the host shouted, "Let the match begin," Yunyan unconsciously closed her eyes and stretched out her hand to cover it tightly, as if she was afraid to see the scene of Ryudo being beaten to the ground. But before Yunyan could cover her eyes and finish the sentence, "Ryudo classmate, you must come down alive," in her heart, there was a burst of thunderous roars all around. At the same time, the atmosphere around the arena was burning to the extreme. Immediately after, the host who just announced the start of the match shouted in disbelief, "Match! The match is over. The winner of the first match is the legendary child Ryudo Kiryu." What? After hearing the host's words, Yunyan trembled in fear and let go of her hand. Her eyes widened as she looked inside the huge iron cage. She saw the devil muscle man, Evanborn, who was ready to throw a heavy punch 2 seconds ago, had already fallen to the ground like a salted fish. His tiger eyes that were still glaring angrily were now rolled back. His chin was crooked at a strange angle, and there was a big shoe print on his face. It felt as if someone had given him a solid slap, causing his face to be crooked. One just like that? After realizing that the opponent had fallen to the ground, Yunyan looked at Ryuto, who was standing in the middle of the arena. At this time, Ryuto's face was not red and he was not out of breath. It was almost impossible to tell that he had just fought. Of course, from a certain point of view, it was indeed not a fight. At most, it was a one-sided beating. But in any case, this match ended too quickly and too suddenly. Although the audience did not expect the match to last for too long. But what everyone did not expect was that it was so fast that even the referee could not react in time. This earth-shattering match was later called the beginning of the legend. And according to the description of a spectator who was lucky enough to see the match with his own eyes, the situation at the time was roughly like this. How do I put it? In short, it was unexpected. Although Evanborn is not too strong, as a professional wrestler, his ability to take hits is undeniable. It is not easy to KO him. The moment the referee announced the start of the match, Evanborn directly pounced on the opponent and tried to use the lock technique to drag the battlefield to the ground. This way, he could use the absolute weight difference to completely suppress the opponent. Looking at the way he pounced, it was terrifying. If he was facing a normal sea-level fighter, he should be able to take him down smoothly. Unfortunately, the opponent that day was not of this level. The second that the burly body pounced, young Master Ryudo stepped to the side and his right fist hit Evanborn's chest like lightning. This punch seemed to be magical. After the punch landed, from our perspective, we could clearly see that Evanborn suddenly stopped. Although it was only a short second or so, it was enough. Young Master Long Do swung his left elbow and hit Evanborn's chin at an extremely close distance. After Evanborn lost his balance, young Master Long Do's left foot caught Evanborn's heel and charged forward, knocking Evanborn's entire body backwards and onto the ground. The back of the burly man's head hit the ground without any protection and made a loud bang. It was as if I could feel the vibration from the seat I was sitting in. I was worried that his brain matter would spurt out from his nose. Young Master Ryudo seemed to be worried about this, so he directly jumped up and used his full body weight to stomp on Evanborn's face. He helped Evanborn to step on the brain matter back. It was a joke, just to liven up the atmosphere. Of course, Evanborn was not seriously injured. He only stayed in the hospital for 3 years before he was released. The only small problem was that he suffered from a psychological illness of peeing his pants when he saw a high school student. At this point, the narration of the spectator who had watched the match ended here. This also showed how easy Ryudo's first victory was. Chapter 101. The winner of the first match is the legendary child Ryudo Kiryu. Along with the referee's roar of disbelief, the first match ended as fast as lightning. According to the accurate statistics, the entire match only took 1.78 seconds. It was really like a flash of lightning. Is this real? I'm not dreaming, am I? Yunyan watched as the huge iron cage rose and Evanborn was carried away by a group of people to receive treatment. Her rosy lips couldn't help but slightly open, and her eyes were filled with astonishment. How is this possible? Such a strong and powerful wrestler was defeated by Ryudo just like that? Other than Yunyan, the rest of the audience were also shocked by this shocking scene and constantly let out thunderous roars. Oh. What did I just see? That's too strong. As expected of the legendary child, it seems like he came prepared. Get those idiots over here right now. If there's a woman, throw her aside. If you don't watch such an interesting match, you'd be wasting your life. For a moment, Ryudo, who was standing in the middle of the field, became the focus of everyone, including Furamaki Sotaro, who was also staring at the youth. Good lord, is he also a genius? That profound skill, Tiger Fall, just now was already quite familiar, as if he had practiced it for a few years. With Furamaki Sotaro's eyesight, he could clearly see the tit-for-tat confrontation in the ring. Ryudo first used insight to dodge the fatal grab, then his right fist accurately hit Evanborn's diaphragm, causing him to spasm for a moment. In that short second where time seemed to be frozen, the youth rapidly unleashed a series of vicious and smooth, continuous attacks. Every move was aimed at the opponent's vital points, directly knocking the strong and durable wrestler unconscious on the spot. In order to achieve what he had done just now, other than having sufficient mastery of the profound meaning of skill, Tiger Fall, one also needed to have a strong body and mental fortitude. When enemies meet on a narrow path, the courageous will win. First, courage, second, strength, and third, skill. Especially in this kind of cage battle where both sides had nowhere to retreat, the effect of courage was quite obvious. Would he be nervous when others made a move? Was there any burden when he took action? The key to all of this was the guts. The fact that Ryudo, at the age of 16, had the courage to fight without fear in a real battle greatly exceeded Furamaki Sotaro's expectations. Of course, what Furamaki Sotaro didn't know was that Ryuto had already changed his title to Extreme Young Master. After changing to this title, his courage had already reached the level of Level 4, International Warrior. It could be said that he was in a state where he was full of guts and was not afraid of anything even if the sky collapsed. However, although the first fighter had been carried off the field, the competition was not over yet. Not long after, the second fighter had already quickly walked towards the ring under the host's shout. Because this was a promotion match, Long Do had to defeat 3 opponents in a row, and there was no time to take a breather. Therefore, when the middle-aged man wearing a Taekwondo uniform with a fierce face and the word Fierce Tiger printed in Korean on his back walked towards the ring, the audience suddenly became excited again. The host also took the opportunity to introduce in full swing, "Ladies and gentlemen, the second fighter in this promotion match was the Ferocious Tigers of Bangzi, who had already won 4 matches. Park In-young. Let us welcome him with a warm round of applause." In the cheers of the surrounding audience, Park In-young walked steadily into the cage ring that was being opened. While he was on the stage, the fighter had been looking straight ahead, as if he was not affected by the surrounding noise at all. When she saw the straight figure, Yunyan asked in confusion, "What's going on? This fighter seems to give off a different feeling than the previous wrestlers." Sotaro next to her explained, "Because this guy belongs to the type of Dao Seeker, his aura is more serious, without the stench of money." Dao Seeker? What does that mean? Although most of the people who come to this underground fighting arena are here for money, there are also a small number of people who want to become stronger. These fighters who don't covet fame and fortune and only pursue strength are called Dao Seekers. So that's how it is. Then Ryudo is also a Dao Seeker. Of course he is. As the successor of the Furamaki-style martial arts, how can he fight for money? That's too vulgar. In front of Yunyan, Furamaki straightened his back and said confidently, "If he knew that Ryudo was counting money in his heart, who knows if he would vomit blood on the spot." However, even at this time, Furamaki was already quite optimistic about Ryuto. But when the man who was said to be a Special Forces fighting skills coach stood in front of Ryudo, the iron cage above slowly fell down. Furamaki still couldn't help but secretly break out in a cold sweat for his disciple. As far as he knew, although Pu Renyong was a C-rank fighter, Pu Renyong's skills were undoubtedly at the top of the C-rank group. Different from the Devil's Muscle Man, Evanborn, who only had a strong physique but extremely rough skills, Park In-young had good attainments in skills and extremely rich combat experience. Before coming to Desai River Fighting Arena, Park In-young had won 3 consecutive championships in the Korean National Taekwondo competition and was one of the top masters in the surface world. After he mastered the kicking Taekwondo to the point of perfection, because he couldn't find an opponent in the surface world, he transferred to the inner world to compete in underground fighting skills. Of course, the purpose of this man coming here to compete was purely to better train himself, not to get paid. Therefore, fighting with this type of fighter was much more difficult than fighting the Devil's Muscle Man. Countdown begins. 3, 2, 1. Match begins. Just as Furamaki Sotaro was thinking about the confrontation between Ryudo and Park In-young, the host had already announced the start of the match. Different from Evanborn, Park In-young didn't have any intention of underestimating Ryudo, but chose to go all out from the start. This young man's strength is not ordinary, but he is not my opponent. The moment the battle began, Park In-young's body crouched slightly, and his legs jumped forward as if they had hit a spring. He used a swift and fierce mid-air twisting side kick to kill his opponent. When this kick was out, Park In-young's waist and right leg twisted greatly with his hip joint as the axis, perfectly transmitting the strength to his foot, and accurately kicked Ryudo's neck. What a beautiful flying kick, especially from the perspective of a third party. It was as perfect as a textbook. Moreover, This kind of midair kick that accumulated the strength of the whole body and even added weight couldn't be blocked. It could only be dodged. This was basically the consensus of everyone present. After all, the strength of the leg was 3 times stronger than the hand, especially this kind of kick that a kicking master used all the strength in his body. The strength was enough to break an arm like a twig. However, in the next moment, Ryudo didn't care and stretched out his hand, blocking the side of his body with his forearm. What the hell? Is this guy crazy? Seeing Ryudo stretch out his arm to block Park In-young's kick, the audience wondered if some strange liquid had suddenly entered his brain. If it was a muscular man with arms thicker than his thighs blocking, it would be fine, but how could a teenager like you block it? Your arm is not even as thick as a baseball bat. Won't this kick break your bones? Bang! In the next moment, that fierce side kick directly swept Ryudo's left arm. At the same time, Ryudo's right fist also landed on Park In-young's crotch. Poochie. The moment the fist landed, everyone seemed to hear the sound of something breaking. Of course, it was definitely not the heart breaking, but the balls breaking. Chapter 102. What was the most unbearable pain in this world? Generally speaking, the medical field divided the pain that humans could endure into 12 levels. The highest level was the pain that women had to endure during childbirth. However, most men would silently shake their heads in disagreement with this conclusion, because in their opinion, there were more painful experiences than childbirth. And this kind of encounter was egg-crushing. At this moment, in this very arena, Park In-young was fortunate enough to experience the ultimate pain of a human, the pain of having one's balls crushed. For this Taekwondo expert from South Korea, his psychological changes in an instant were quite complicated. When his right foot kicked Ryudo's arm as he wished, Park In-young was secretly delighted. This idiot actually used his arm to block my kick. Wouldn't that cripple his arm? But as the kick hit its target, and there was a clear feedback coming from there, Park In-young felt that something wasn't right. What's going on? Why was his arm as hard as steel? Instead, it was my leg that was almost broken? Before Park In-young could feel the pain of his right leg hitting the target, the pain from the recoil hit his nerves. Long Do's fist had already landed on his crotch with all his strength without any hesitation. The moment his lower body was hit, Park In-young knew that he was done for. He could no longer fight. From the moment he was hit to the moment he felt the pain, there was a short period of time. It was like a period of time for humans to repent. In the blink of an eye, an indescribable pain spread from his lower body to Park In-young's brain. Pain, pain, ouch, ouch. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of being ridiculed, Park In-young's mind would have been filled with over 100 IS. However, this was not enough to describe the extreme pain he felt. Plop. Park In-young was punched and fell to the ground. He abruptly covered his crotch with both hands, and his sturdy body quickly twisted like a cooked shrimp. Because it was too painful, Park In-young opened his mouth and wanted to scream. However, because the pain was too intense, even if Park In-young opened his mouth, he could not scream because of the pain. He could only open and close his mouth like a fish out of water. It was over. Although Park In-young was still conscious, as long as he was a man, he would know that the match was over. His vitals had been hit, and it seemed to have been split open. No man would be able to continue fighting under such circumstances. Of course, from Ryudo's point of view, Park In-young was asking for trouble and seeking his own death. If you want to kick, then just kick. Why did you have to jump up? Moreover, this idiot jumped so high and still spread his legs so casually, as if he was afraid that others wouldn't be able to hit his vital parts. If Park In-young really wanted to play like that, he would at least need to use some kind of secret technique like Golden Bell Shield, Iron Crotch, or something. However, Park In-young didn't put any effort into this aspect, so he ended up with nothing. But this move of his was really strong. I almost couldn't block it. He then walked up and gave Park In-young a kick, knocking him out. Ryudo casually swung his left arm that he had used to block the kick. He felt that his arm was still somewhat numb and painful. From an ordinary person's point of view, Ryudo had used such a weak arm to block the kick that was filled with all his strength. The result would definitely be a cracking sound, and his bones would be broken as if he had been hit by a car. Unfortunately, Ryudo had Copper Skin Mastery and Iron Bone Mastery, these two pay-to-win passive skills, which provided him with strong resistance. Although the proficiency of these two skills was not enough for him to take all the damage, it was not a problem for him to withstand this kick. The match has ended. The winner of the second match is the legendary child, Ryudo Kiryu. Seeing that Park In-young had fainted, the host decisively signaled the end of the match. While announcing the end of the match, the host also secretly covered his lower body, as if he could empathize with Park In-young's experience. Looking closely, other than the host, the surrounding audience members who were all male, all of them simultaneously covered their lower body or clamped their legs together. This kind of collective action that happened at the same time was called the egg-shattering consensus phenomenon by the dragon fighters. The so-called egg-shattering symbology. It meant that when someone's balls were shattered, all the males who saw the scene or heard the sound could not help but react. They either clamped their legs together or covered their lower body with their hands, without exception. Of course, for a female audience member like Yunyan, such a scene was more or less awkward. Seeing Park In-young being carried off like a salted fish, Yunyan could not help but mumble, Is this considered a battle? In Yunyan's mind, a battle should be a fist-to-fist fight, a passionate collision of body, technique, and soul, a competition where one's strongest side was displayed through sweat and blood. But Ryudo's fighting style just now, to be honest, was a little despicable. However, Furamaki Sotaro smiled and nodded. Battles have always been despicable. As long as you can win, anything is fine. Even if you attack there? What do you think? A real battle is like this. In the past, samurai fights sounded grand, but in reality, they would throw away their swords, bite each other's teeth, gouge each other's eyeballs, and dig out each other's balls. It's just that the later generations have beautified the profession of samurai. To put it bluntly, they are no different from hooligans. Bite each other's teeth, gouge each other's eyeballs? When she heard such impactful words, Yunyan was stunned for a moment, as if she did not expect such a terrifying scene to exist in this world. But whether a fighter was despicable or not was not important to them. The most important thing was whether they walked off the stage standing or lay down on the ground. With the end of the second match, the third match was even more in line with Furamaki Sotaro's words. When Ryudo continued to kill his second opponent, the third match did not immediately begin. Under the arrangement of the host, some staff members walked onto the stage with some messy things and began to arrange things around the stage. What is the meaning of this? Why do they have to put things on the stage? Yunyan looked at the staff members in confusion, as if she was somewhat puzzled by the sudden change. This is one of the special rules of the competition, the prop battle. Prop battle? Does it mean that we can use props? Well, the last match of every promotion match is always a special match. The prop battle means that there will be many props other than normal weapons placed on the stage to see who can make better use of these props. Looking at the props piled up on the stage, the old man showed a dignified expression. Chapter 103. After Furamaki Sotaro finished his explanation, the staff had already finished setting up the ring. At this time, the originally not-so-spacious ring was placed with benches, bicycles, KFC signboards, flower pots, railings, and other common street things. How to describe the feeling these small props gave people? It was a little subtle. Do you think these small props like benches are weapons? They definitely can't be considered weapons. Otherwise, if I carry a bench on the street, won't the police arrest me for carrying a weapon? But although benches and other small props are not weapons, they are still useful. However, whether or not they would be useful in a fight would depend on how the contestants used them. After the ring was set up for the last match, the opponent of the third prop battle slowly walked out of the contestant tunnel. Dong, dong, dong. Just as the huge figure walked out of the contestant tunnel step by step, the surrounding audience couldn't help but shout, "Wait, it's actually him. Wasn't this guy suspended for violating the rules and killing his opponent half a year ago? Probably the suspension time is up, otherwise he would have been a B-class fighter. This monster is not a C-class fighter. This is troublesome. I actually met this murderer in the prop battle. He is an expert in using props to execute people." Amidst the exclamations of the audience, The villain Mike, who came from across the sea and was wanted for committing multiple murders, walked into the ring while drooling. He was known as the Dirty Executioner. His 2-meter-tall fat body was wearing large overalls, exposing his fat and hairy upper body to the air. With such a figure, coupled with a smile brimming with happiness and a ferocious glint in his eyes, it made people feel as if they were looking at a wild boar in clothes. Hee hee, young people are good. I like to play with young people the most. I'll play for a long time before I die. Pfft. When Michael the villain saw Ryudo standing in the ring and looking at him coldly, he laughed like he had met his favorite toy. The old man below the stage couldn't help but frown and say, "Oh no, I actually met Michael the villain at this time." Michael the villain. This guy doesn't look like a good person at first glance. He gives off a disgusting feeling. It's not just disgusting. He was a felon in America before. After he was smuggled here and started to fight underground, he publicly tortured and killed his opponents. He's a scumbag who enjoys torturing and killing others. Although Furamaki Sotaro had not seen the Dirty Executioner's previous matches, he had heard a little about what he had done. In that game, which was also a prop battle, the villain Mike forcibly stuffed a railing into his opponent's anus, nailed his hands to the bicycle, and rode around the field. The tragedy of a match, but actually a punishment, lasted for more than 10 minutes. When the entire ring was covered in blood and even the host couldn't stand it anymore and finally announced the end of the match, Michael the villain directly tore his opponent's throat. Therefore, there was no doubt that Michael the villain was a homicidal maniac, a lunatic who should be caught and hanged. However, this lunatic was now locked in the same cage as Ryudo, surrounded by a variety of execution props. Phew. It seemed that the third match wouldn't end so easily. As the iron cage that had just been lifted slowly fell, the surrounding escape routes were completely sealed. Ryudo looked at the execution props scattered around and couldn't help but sigh. Seeing that Ryudo seemed a little unhappy, the smile on Michael the villain's face became even more joyful. This brat actually made it to the third match, which means that he's quite capable. It's better to play it safe. Thinking of this, Michael the villain discreetly extended his right hand to his butt and even reached into his pants to buckle a few times. On the surface, this glossy and sloppy murderer was normally buckling his butt, but in reality, when he extended his hand, there was a small skinning knife in his palm. The skinning knife was covered with a rubber hose and rope, so it went without saying where this thing came from. After secretly holding the sharp blade in the palm of his right hand, Michael the villain extended his left hand and pretended to be friendly. Before the fight, how about we shake hands to show our friendliness? If you have the guts. Seeing Michael the villain's action, some of the audience who had seen him fight before couldn't help but say, "Here he goes again. This bastard is playing this trick again." Trick? What trick is he playing? He likes to provoke others to shake hands with him. After his left hand grasps the person, he immediately stabs the small props in his right hand. This trick has killed several newbies before. The audience's words faintly floated into Yunyan's ears, and when she noticed it, she immediately shouted, "Wait, Ryudo classmate, don't." Sure, you can't give a hint to the players on the field, or you'll be asked to leave by the guards. But before Yunyan finished shouting, Sotaro quickly made a shushing gesture to her. At this time, the two guards who were about to walk over also tactfully returned to their original position. But even so, Yunyan still whispered to Sotaro, "If this is the case, Ryudo will suffer a big loss. That villain is obviously up to no good." "Don't worry, he's not stupid. How can he be stupid enough to shake hands with others? Shake hands, right? Sure, I like shaking hands the most." But before Sotaro finished his words, Ryudo directly said to Michael the villain with a smile, as if he was slapping him in the face, "What the hell?" The moment they heard Ryudo's death-seeking declaration, Sotaro was stunned, Yunyan was also stunned, and everyone in the audience was stunned. No way. Does this guy really not see that Michael the villain is up to no good by shaking hands with him? Or does he really believe that he won't be tricked? He took the bait. As if he was afraid that this fool would go back on his word, Michael the villain quickly extended his left hand in front of Ryudo, and at the same time, he smiled and said, "Then hurry up, let's shake hands and then we can start." Huh. Zap. Before Michael the villain finished speaking, a rusty nail had appeared in the palm of his left hand. This nail looked at least 5 centimeters long, and the head was blunt. It was full of rust and the smell of oil. It seemed to be a gadget removed from the bicycle behind Ryuto. At the moment when Michael the villain stretched out his left hand, Ryuto, who had hidden the nail in his hand, directly made his move. He ruthlessly inserted the nail into the back of Michael the villain's hand. It was hard to imagine that such a blunt nail could penetrate the fan-sized arm so smoothly, and it penetrated the back of the hand and came out of the palm. This extremely ruthless scene suddenly stunned Michael the villain and all the audience. Chapter 104. Michael the villain was actually ruthless enough. He actually planned to grab the other person's hand with one hand, and then take the opportunity to sneak attack with the sharp weapon in the other hand. But who would have thought that Ryuto seemed to be even more ruthless than this guy, and he did it even more ruthlessly. He didn't even need to shake hands, and directly served with nails. Oh, ah. The moment he reacted, Michael the villain held his left hand that was in severe pain and screamed. At the same time, dirty blood scattered around. Creak. Bang. At the same time, Ryuto didn't hesitate to pick up the stool on the side and swung it toward the head of this big scum, making a dull sound. This hit directly smashed the stool into pieces, and it also exploded a bloody flower on Michael the villain's head. Oh, your head is quite hard, and it's probably quite empty inside, right? After smashing Michael the villain a few steps back and leaned on the edge of the iron cage to gasp for breath, Ryuto picked up a bicycle from the side. At least a dozen pounds of bicycle was carried in his hand, and then he even quickly swung it. It was hard to imagine that someone could use a bicycle as a weapon, and when he swung it, it felt like nunchaku, swinging up and down, left and right, for a time. The huge body of the bicycle flew in front of Michael the villain's eyes, and he was dumbfounded. Of course, in addition to the villain Mike, the surrounding audience was also dumbfounded by what they saw. Suddenly, an audience couldn't help but say, What is this guy doing? He can't be a professional acrobat, right? That's right, it was really like acrobatics. From the previous blunt nail piercing through his hand, it could be seen that Ryuto's proficiency in using these small props was not inferior to a professional acrobat. But I'm afraid no one would have thought that the reason why Ryuto could use the props so smoothly was mainly because of the binding skill, the rogue doesn't die by bare hands. Smooth as silk. At this moment, no matter what tool it was, Ryuto was able to use it as smoothly as his own fingers. Even a large item like the bicycle was no exception. Stinking brat. Come on. Of course, Michael the villain would not just stand there and take the beating. He pulled out the skinning knife hidden in his right hand and charged towards Ryuto. This charge seemed reckless, but in fact, it was a little clever. After all, this big guy was standing sideways with his shoulder in front of him. Even if Ryuto smashed the bicycle over, it wouldn't hit any vital parts. However, if he could get close enough, he would definitely be able to take Ryuto's life with a single slash. Bang! In the next second, the bicycle smashed into Michael the villain's body, but it didn't cause much of a commotion. After all, his skin was rough and his flesh was thick. As long as it wasn't a vital part, being hit by something as light as the bicycle wouldn't hurt him at all. But at the same time, Ryuto let go of the large item in his hand and shot out from the side. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Michael the villain's body. Seeing that the opponent was right in front of him, Michael the villain didn't hesitate to stab with his knife. But it was right in front of Ryuto's eyes. Profound skill, tiger fall. The right fist that was filled with power heavily smashed into Michael the villain's abdomen. It directly caused his right hand that was wielding the knife to stiffen in midair. Although it was only for a short period of time, it was enough. In an instant, Ryuto jumped up. His right hand was like a blade piercing towards Michael the villain's heart. It wasn't difficult to injure this big guy, but it was extremely difficult to make him lose his ability to fight. After all, Michael the villain's body was as sturdy as a gorilla. Even if he had the rogue doesn't die by bare hands, it was quite troublesome to use the surrounding small items to kill this big guy with thick skin. Fortunately, Ryuto still had a final trump card that could be used in this situation. Equipment. The moment his right hand stabbed out, a dragon-tooth sawtooth army knife that was painted black popped out from his sleeve. He quickly grasped it and stabbed into Michael the villain's body. This dragon-tooth sawtooth army knife was an excellent item that could be used on the battlefield. Therefore, when Ryudo stabbed with all his strength, the power of this knife was enough to penetrate the thick layer of fat and muscle and directly reach the heart. This is. Therefore, in the next second, Michael the villain only felt a chill in his heart. A coldness that he had never felt before filled his body. I really want to kill him. Plop. The murderer who came from the other side of the ocean fell on the stage. Until the end, his eyes were wide open, as if he wanted to take Ryudo with him. It ended just like that? It can't be, right? When Michael the villain fell on the ground and blood seeped out from his chest, even the host-cum-referee couldn't react to what happened. Something's wrong with this? Ryudo clearly used his hand to hit. Why did it look like he was stabbed by a weapon? No, it didn't look like it. He actually used a weapon secretly, right? Looking at the young man who had a normal expression on the stage and the owner of the original battle arena of the River of Sai, who was quietly watching from the special VIP seats, the flower merchant couldn't help but frown. Although he didn't know how Ryudo did it, it was impossible to cause such a penetrating injury with just a hand. This was something that the flower merchant, who was used to watching combat competitions, was 100% sure of. Interesting. He actually used a weapon openly in the ring and was able to hide it from my eyes. It seems that while this kid inherited his father's bravery, his character is also more cunning and fierce. When the flower merchant was secretly observing Ryudo, the host finally announced, "The match is over. The winner of the third match is the legendary child Ryudo Kiryu. At the same time, congratulations to him for being promoted to a B-class fighter." As the referee announced the end of the match, the audience who watched the whole process of the promotion match couldn't help but shout loudly, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. So powerful. He actually won 3 matches in a row." Not only that, he looks very relaxed. I'm afraid he can fight 3 more matches. It should be said that he's worthy of being Boss Yima's bloodline. He's even fiercer than him in the past. Clap, 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 clap. When the iron cage slowly rose, Ryudo took a check from the host and walked down the stage. A tide of applause and cheers came from all directions. Win. He won. He finally won. Seeing Ryudo walk towards her in this enthusiastic atmosphere, Yunyin's hanging heart finally relaxed. Perhaps it was because her nerves had been stretched taut during the intense and stimulating viewing process, but after suddenly relaxing, Yunyin realized that she was already sweating profusely and her legs were a little weak. "Ryudo, classmate, congratulations." Oh. This kind of physical and mental state caused Yunyin to feel dizzy the moment she stood up, and she fell forward in a daze. Ryudo, who came to the side of the table, supported her and waved the 30 million check in front of Yunyin with a smile. "Yunyin, thank you for your support. So please allow me to use this money to treat you to a midnight snack. How about it?" Although he had just experienced 3 fierce battles in a row, Long Do's smile was still quite relaxed at this time, perfectly displaying the vitality and vigor that was unique to a young man. At the same time, this smile also entered Yunyin's heart, making her suddenly feel that this little junior seems to be quite handsome. Chapter 105. When the noisy underground fighting ended, Ryudo and Yunyin walked out of the dull underground world. They came to the street outside the Sino-Hara. It was the beginning of spring. The cool night wind blew on Yunyin's face, making her feel particularly comfortable. Wow, the wind at night is really cool, especially after coming out of that damn place. Looking at the familiar street environment, Yunyin felt for the first time that the things that looked so ordinary looked so beautiful at this time. The underground, Sino-Hara, and the Tokyo street on the ground. Although it was only separated by a floor, it gave people the feeling that it was 2 different worlds. There was no doubt that the Sino-Hara area was a different world full of non-everyday for ordinary people. In that underground world, the law of the jungle, where the strong preyed on the weak, was vividly displayed. The strong could have money, status, and beauties. The weak could only become a target or a wanderer responsible for laughing and sleeping. Due to the lack of social morality and laws in this underground world, most of the people had shed their disguises and revealed their beast-like side. The uncle who drank wine on the street and enjoyed himself with wanderers may be a sanctimonious boss during the day. The aunt who smiled strangely at the fighters in the fighting arena may be an official full of benevolence and morality during the day. The Tsai-no-hara was a demon's den, which provided them with an excellent vent for those who couldn't do whatever they wanted on the ground. The bad air mixed with the smell of money and desire made Yunyan feel so disgusted that she almost couldn't breathe. Only when she came to the ground could she finally take a few breaths. From a certain point of view, hell and heaven had always been two sides of the same coin. After all, as long as you saw hell with your own eyes, then all the places except hell could be called heaven. The meaning of hell was this. However, after coming to the street on the ground, Yunyan couldn't help but turn her head to look at Ryuto, who was walking beside her. She seemed to have a new understanding of this extreme young master. Now, only Yunyan and Dragonhead were walking in this silent night. Furamaki Sotaro had already found a rubbish excuse to sneak away. From Ryuto's point of view, the old man was probably planning to have a good time at the disco in this Sai River Plain. After all, there were many beautiful girls there who wouldn't be angry even if someone touched their buttocks. But now that Sotaro wasn't there to be a third wheel, Yunyan could seriously size up the male student beside her. Ryuto's expression hadn't changed much since he obtained 3 consecutive victories in the ring, the qualification to enter the B-class group, and the 30 million yuan prize money. He always had a faint smile on his face. It was as if to this man, the underground world that was filled with things that Yunyan didn't see as a daily routine. This made it hard for Yunyan to imagine how such a 16-year-old boy could be so indifferent to the ugliness of the world. What kind of life did he live before? Did he live in this kind of hell all day long? If she thought about it at a higher level, Yunyan knew the male student Ryuto Kiryu, who was studying in Dori First High School's 2nd grade Class B. Is the friend who is willing to seriously talk to me about the novel content really the person I know? Ryuto seemed to feel Yunyan's gaze that contained complex emotions, and he also looked at her with a smile. At the same time, he asked, "Why are you looking at me with this expression? As if you just know me? I thought I knew you before, but after tonight, I realized that I don't seem to know you as much as I thought." Haha, mystery is also a kind of charm. Although I'm far inferior to you in this aspect, you don't have to be mysterious to be charming. At least I think so. Why would you suddenly say something like this? Really, if I didn't know, I would think that you have some strange thoughts. Hearing Ryuto's words that seemed to be teasing at first, but after listening carefully, it was more or less ambiguous. Yunyan couldn't help but blush and turned her head. Generally speaking, when a man takes the initiative to praise the other party's charm in front of a woman, it more or less has some hidden meaning in it. But for a man like Ryuto, who is a tough guy, he shouldn't make this kind of hint like an ordinary high school student, right? Yunyan thought so. However, who knew that Ryuto replied without hesitation, "Of course, I already have some strange thoughts you didn't realize until now, right?" Suddenly, Yunyan was stunned. She was just joking with Ryuto, but who knew that she heard an answer that didn't sound like a joke at all? And this answer sounded a bit like a confession of her feelings? After being stunned for a few seconds, Yunyan asked in a slow voice, "What do you mean by strange thoughts? What do you mean?" "It's the strange thoughts that you have in your heart." "How do you know what kind of strange thoughts I have in my heart?" Then let's be more straightforward, Yunyan. Actually, I've liked you for a long time." After hearing Ryuto's sudden and undisguised confession, Yunyan's face suddenly showed a dumbfounded expression. "What's with the expression on your face? It's so strange." No. It's your way of thinking that's strange. How can you make this kind of lightning-like confession that I don't know how to ridicule? It does seem a bit strange. I don't deny this at all." In the face of Yunyan's questioning, Ryuto just nodded slightly and didn't continue. In fact, according to Yunyan's understanding of the romantic act of confession, she couldn't imagine that there would be someone in the world who could say the words "I like you" in such a relaxed manner like "good morning." Shouldn't a normal male high school student's confession be to invite the girl to an empty space, then bashfully blush in front of the girl, and struggle for a long time before saying, I like you. This sentence? But Ryudo was different. In his world, I like you was as light as let's eat something. As if he didn't have to bear any psychological pressure to say it, very forthright. After this, the two walked silently on the street, like a young couple out for a walk at night. However, even though Long Do's face had a calm expression, he still had a calm expression. But Yun Yin, who was walking next to him and suddenly received a confession, felt more and more uncomfortable, and her walking posture had subtle changes. Because in just a few minutes, the heart of Miss Suki was really in a mess. Chapter 106. What should I do? Ryudo, classmate, actually confessed to me, then I should also respond to him. In fact, before this, Yun Yin had rejected hundreds of confessions and had sent out countless good person cards. In this regard, she could be said to be a good person card expert. If it was a normal male student who confessed to her, as long as she casually said a few words, "You are a good person, let's be friends," she would be able to get away with it. But facing Ryudo, Yun Yin didn't know what to say. Logically speaking, as long as she said those words as usual, with Ryudo's bold personality, he would definitely not continue to pester her. But for some reason, Yun Yin felt that the sentence 100% proficiency could not be said. Every time she wanted to open her mouth, the smiling face that had warmed Yun Yin not long ago would quickly rush into her mind. In the arena filled with the smell of dirty money and the pungent smell of blood. When Yun Yin was about to collapse due to lack of energy, Ryuto, who had finished the match, walked over and held her shoulder. At the same time, he showed her a very handsome smile. At that moment, it was as if the surrounding noise had all disappeared. The whole world only had Yun Yin and Ryudo. Facing this kind of Ryudo, Yun Yin really couldn't say the words, "You are a good person, let's be friends." Just when Yun Yin was feeling incomparably tangled in her heart, Ryudo suddenly stopped and said to her, "Yun Yin, it's here, let's go in." Here? Ah, right. This time we are going out to eat supper. After being reminded by Ryudo, Yun Yin realized that the two of them weren't simply walking on the street. In fact, they wanted to find a place to eat supper and relax. In fact, Yun Yin had never enjoyed supper, which was a night activity that the people loved to see and hear. After all, as the eldest daughter of the Suki family, Yun Yin naturally couldn't run around in the middle of the night. At most, she would eat some exquisite snacks at home. Therefore, Yun Yin was still very interested in the supper Ryudo prepared to treat her. This was not an ordinary experience. But when she raised her head to look at the shop in front of her, she was shocked by the situation of the shop. At least from Yun Yin's point of view, this small restaurant called Dragon Family Cuisine was almost nothing worth praising. The main entrance was so small that it could only fit two people side by side. Although the curtains hanging on the door were clean, they were already very old, and the wall hung with very outdated posters and signs. If it was only at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, in any case, she wouldn't walk in the middle of the night. Ryudo-san, this shop? On the surface, it looks very shabby, but I can guarantee that this is the best supper stall in Tokyo. Before Yun Yin could recover from her shock, Long Do smiled and half-pushed, half-pulled her into the rundown shop. After entering the shop, what appeared in front of Yun Yin was a neatly arranged long table and a large wall of menus hung on the wall. There were dandan noodles, handmade dumplings, handmade soup dumplings, boiled fish, boiled meat, sliced beef, spicy chicken, mapo tofu. There were so many dishes on the wall that it almost couldn't fit. Although the front was a bit shabby, the decoration and management of the shop seemed to have put in a lot of effort. Not only was it clean and tidy, but it also made people feel a sense of familial warmth. This made Yun Yin feel relieved after coming in. But at the next moment, the boss who walked out of the kitchen still startled Yun Yin again. When Ryudo shouted inside, the small door of the shop was pushed open. A middle-aged man with an obvious scar on his eye, wearing a blood-stained chef's uniform, and a fierce look in his eyes walked over with a boning knife. In the middle of the night, seeing this kind of appearance was indeed a little scary, and Yun Yin also quickly reached out and grabbed the corner of Ryudo's clothes. But Ryudo didn't care and said to the boss, "I want cold bean sprouts, spicy shrimp, kung pao chicken, and shredded pork with garlic sauce, and 2 bowls of dan noodles. Yunyan, do you want medium or strong spicy? Ryudo turned his head and asked Yunyan the last sentence. Although it sounded strange, after all, whether it was medium or strong spicy, it didn't seem like something Yunyan would order. But in fact, Yunyan was a fan of spicy food. Until now, only the chef in Yunyan's house knew about Miss Yun's taste. Usually, he would try his best to make some spicy sauce for her during meals. So Yunyan asked doubtfully, "Wait, how do you know I can eat spicy?" "About this. Actually, you occasionally have a chilly smell on your body." "Hey, really?" Yunyan heard this and quickly sniffed her arm. But of course, there was no chilly smell. After the two of them teased each other, Yunyan still chose the strong spicy taste, which made Ryudo feel ashamed. "Are you sure you want the strong spicy? Don't be fooled by the boss's appearance. He went to a food country to learn for 7 or 8 years and came back as a professional chef. He is very heavy-handed." "It's okay. I can take it no matter how spicy it is. I won't lose to anyone in this aspect." Under Yunyan's confident nod, the boss served tonight's supper in order in a short while. After quickly blanching, the cold bean sprout was added with leeks, chives, garlic, chili, aged vinegar, and pepper sesame oil. It was crispy and refreshing, and it was very refreshing when chewed in the mouth. The shelled prawns were fried until golden yellow, and with parsley, pepper, dried red pepper, and other supplementary ingredients, the fried, spicy prawns had a strong, spicy taste, and the meat was firm and crisp. The color was gorgeous, and it made people drool. The Kung Pao chicken cooked with chicken as the main ingredient, peanuts, chili, and other supplementary ingredients was fresh and spicy. The freshness of the chicken and the crispness of the fried peanuts were a perfect match. The shredded fish-flavored pork, stir-fried with shredded radish, wood ear, shredded meat, and pickled pepper were finely selected. The finished dish was rosy in color, rich in fish flavor, and had a salty, sweet, sour, and spicy taste. With such a table of dishes in front of her, Yunyan, who didn't have the habit of eating supper, couldn't help but raise her chopsticks and eat heartily. Every dish is so delicious. It's a taste that I haven't eaten before, that's for sure. Although the boss doesn't look good, his culinary skills are quite good. I can skip the words "don't look good." Next time, just introduce my culinary skills. In the boss's helpless wry smile, 2 bowls of bright red dan noodles were served on the table. At the same time, a cup of draft beer and a cup of sour plum juice were served. The dan noodles were also very delicious. Although it was spicy and oily, it was very satisfying to eat. However, while eating the noodles, Yunyan's gaze fell on the cup of draft beer in Ryudo's hand. Chapter 107. That. Ryudo, what's that in your hand? Draft beer. Do you want to drink it too? It's quite refreshing, especially after a fight. No, I mean, you're only 16 years old now. Why can you drink beer? So you mean I should drink white? Wait, what kind of weird brain circuit is this? I also want to ask you what kind of weird brain circuit you have. You actually told a young master who just killed someone in the underground arena that underage people can't drink. You actually think I care about this? Ryudo couldn't help but laugh. Then he picked up the draft beer in his hand and took a big gulp. This seems to be the case. Hearing this, Yunyan suddenly sighed, and then asked as if she finally reacted. The big guy you killed in the end. Is he really dead? In fact, not long ago after the third match, Yunyan wanted to ask, but she didn't ask. From any point of view, the big bad guy named Michael the villain should be dead. But other than Yunyan, no one in the underground arena seemed to be surprised by this matter. They seemed to be quite used to it. When he heard this question, Ryudo casually said while eating spicy shrimp, "Well, of course that guy is dead. I killed him." "Then you just killed someone. Don't you think it's..." Dirty executioner, Michael the villain, a murderer on the run in American, has at least a dozen lives in his hands. Do you think such a person doesn't deserve to die? Of course he deserves to die, but wouldn't it be better to leave it to the law? Actually, first of all, have you ever thought about why the underground area of Fortress River Plain can continue to operate? Nothing in it is legal. Well, There should be some high officials. Ah, I understand now. After hearing Ryudo's hint, Yunyin couldn't help but frown, as if she saw some deeper dirty transactions. Although the underground area of the Sai River Plain was hidden, it was not completely untraceable, especially with so many people coming and going in that area every day. As long as the government or the police wanted to investigate, there was no reason why they couldn't. However, this underground world had existed for so many years, which meant that there must be some high-ranking officials watching over it. The Sai River Plain was both an underground den of demons and an underground den of gold. The daily flow of money inside was at least in the hundreds of millions. Other than going to the flower merchants, a portion of the money should have been given to the protective umbrella in exchange for the protection of this place. Therefore, even if it was Michael the villain who had fled from abroad, as long as he entered the battle arena, it was equivalent to receiving the protection of those high officials and nobles. Under such circumstances, even the worst murderer would not be punished by the law. This was the reality of the underground world. If I don't kill Michael the villain, he might kill another 10, 20, or even 30 people. Do you think I should do that now? Of course, of course. After understanding the root of everything, Yunyin took a deep breath and loudly said to the boss in the kitchen, "Sorry, boss, give me a cup of draft beer." "Aya, didn't you just say that I shouldn't drink? Why? Don't tell me you were scared by what we just talked about." "Humph, I'm a literary author. I won't be so timid. If I don't even dare to look directly at the darkness, how can I write the truth of this world?" "Well said. Come. Cheers for your heroism. Let's do it. Who's afraid of who?" After hearing Ryudo's praise, Yunyin grabbed the full cup of draft beer that the boss had just sent over and gulped it down. Compared to the cooked beer that had been sterilized at high temperatures, the draft beer had a more refreshing taste. Furthermore, the alcohol content of this draft beer wasn't high, which made it more suitable for Yunyin, a little girl who hadn't drunk alcohol before. Phew, refreshing. Because she had just eaten a lot of hot food, her body was a little hot, and she had also sweated a lot. This big mouthful of refreshing draft beer immediately made Yunyin feel refreshed. I've decided, next time when I write a Valentine's Day scene, I'll arrange for the female lead to give the male lead a big can of draft beer, and the two of them can drink it. No, no, no. No matter how much you like to drink this stuff, it's too much to give it on Valentine's Day. Really? Then how about changing it to dandan noodles? This is also very delicious. You're really a genius. Can't you give chocolate normally? But everyone gives chocolate. If I write like this, there's no novelty. I like to write things that can make people feel novel. In the midst of the two's teasing, the dishes on the table were gradually cleared, and the glasses were also filled to the brim. More than an hour later, when Ryudo helped Yunyin out of the small restaurant, she was so drunk that she couldn't even recognize her own mother. Are you kidding me? To drink like this, you really don't treat me as an outsider. Looking at Yunyin, who reeked of alcohol, her cheeks were red, and her eyes were wandering. Ryudo couldn't help but lightly flick her forehead. Generally speaking, it was very dangerous for young men and women to drink outside, especially for girls. Before getting drunk in a tavern, after waking up in a hotel, lying next to a white pig eating cabbage. No one would want to encounter this kind of situation. But fortunately, Ryudo was a mature and steady gentleman, and he would never take advantage of others. Therefore, if he were to carry the drunk senior sister Yunyin to the hotel or something, that would be totally, My head is dizzy. Just then, Yunyin suddenly twisted in a daze and tightly hugged Ryudo's arm, and a pair of plump slimes also tightly stuck to him. So if he carried the drunk Yunyin to a hotel or something, Ryudo had no intention of doing so. Rubbing, 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 and twisting. Cough, cough. He didn't even think about it. Calm down, bastard. Although I'm a blonde, I'm not that kind of blonde. After hitting his head, Ryudo hurriedly carried Yunyin into the car. This black car was called by him not long ago, and the one sitting inside was naturally his personal driver, Narukai Otani. But when Narukai saw Ryudo carrying a drunk beauty into the car, he revealed a wretched smile. Narukai even asked with a smile, second-generation head, are we going home? Or to a hotel? By the way, I know of a nice hotel with a rotating waterbed. Stop talking nonsense. Go to her house. It's the place where I picked her up. After hearing Narukai's words, Ryudo hurriedly kicked his seat, and at the same time, he glanced at Yunyin, who was lying on the chair. But the scary thing was, Yunyin opened her eyes in a daze and asked in confusion, rotating waterbed. What is that? Chapter 108. To be honest, when he heard Yunyin ask this question, Ryudo was really numb. God above, he really didn't know how to explain these things to Yunyin. The key was that Ryudo himself didn't understand it very well. Unlike Narukai, who was experienced, Ryudo was really a pure creature like a white lotus. A 16-year-old boy was just like that. So the round bed, waterbed, revolving bed, hammock, red bed, electric bed, happy chair, yoga ball, handcuffs, eye mask, mouth ball, flea, whip, candle, rabbit tail plug, and other things that often appeared in strange rooms, Ryudo had never heard of any of them, and he didn't know what they were used for. So he had to start to change the topic and said to Narukai, "Hurry up, it's already very late. We have to send Yunyin back quickly." "Okay, second generation leader. Wait, let's talk about it. Clearly, revolving waterbed. What is it?" But he didn't know what aroused Yunyin's strong curiosity. At the moment when the car started, she suddenly bounced up from the chair and grabbed Ryudo's collar and continued to ask. Because the car was accelerating, senior sister Yunyin's bounce directly knocked Long Do to the side, forming a wonderful position where one was on top and the other was below. The former seemed to become particularly bold after being drunk, and she even leaned her head over. Rumble. In this way, with the sudden acceleration of the black car, the speed of the car in the back seat also soared. After being pushed down by Yunyin, Ryudo quickly reached out to support her body and whispered, "Yunyin, too close, too close. There are still people in front." "Oh, I suddenly want to listen to music. I'll use my soundproof earplugs to play a rock song to make sure that I can't hear anything. Then put on the baffle, and I won't know what will happen next." Just when Ryudo turned his head to look at Narukai in the front seat, Narukai also made a series of actions while driving at lightning speed. He first quickly put on the 100% soundproof headphones, then pulled out a pure black baffle from nowhere and blocked between the front and back seats, dividing the whole car into two parts. This is good. Although it's a little early, it seems like our third-generation team leader has been settled. After quickly doing all this, Narukai sighed in his heart. But no matter what Narukai thought, Ryudo never thought of this. He never thought of working with Yunyin to assemble the Rulon Group's third-generation leader so early. Narukai, that bastard. Who does he think I am? Will I mess around in a speeding car? After seeing that the bastard Narukai actually thought that he would mess around in the car, Ryudo was really angry. Are you kidding me? I'm a man of steel. How can I be rude to a drunk woman? I'll say it here. Even if I, Ryudo Kiryu, am a bachelor for the rest of my life, die in the hands of Iam, and jump out of the car, I won't touch Yunyin at all. Thinking of this, Long Do immediately froze. He hurriedly reached out and pushed senior sister Yunyin away. Then, he smashed the baffle in front of him with a punch and jumped into the co-pilot seat. Seeing that Ryudo actually destroyed the third-generation incubation device that he carefully prepared, Narukai quickly took off the headphones and asked, Second King Yinluo, you? Shut up, control the speed honestly. If you continue to drive recklessly, we will all die." After scolding Narukai, Ryudo looked at Yunyin, who had already laid down in the back seat and seemed to be slowly falling asleep. He finally felt a little relieved. It was too difficult. The game with Yunyin just now was more difficult than fighting in the arena 3 times in a row. Yunyin was naturally seductive. She was born with a beautiful appearance and temperament. Few young men didn't feel tempted when facing her. Especially when she was drunk and leaning on him softly, that kind of seduction was really terrifying. But even so, Ryudo wouldn't mess around, let alone really fragrant. After all, this was not something that could be really fragrant. It was a major event that concerned her life. The most important thing for a man was to take care of his zipper. He couldn't just unzip it, that would really be too shitty. Therefore, Ryudo simply jumped directly into the co-pilot cabin to avoid the wonderful torture of the rotating waterbed. In this way, on the streets of Tokyo illuminated only by streetlights, the car drove to the rich villa area where Tsutsumira Betsuin was located at a speed that wouldn't affect Yunyen's rest. After stopping on the familiar street, Ryudo went to the back seat, opened the door, and gently shook Yunyen, who was lying in the back seat, awake. "Wake up, Yunyen, we're home." As she lightly swayed her tall and voluptuous body, Yunyen's large eyes that were filled with divine charm also slowly opened. She looked at Long Do, who had a difficult expression on his face. "Have we arrived?" She shook her head, straightened her back and sat up, and asked in a slightly hoarse voice, "Phew, you scared me. I was so afraid that you wouldn't wake up. Then I didn't know how to send you back." Ryudo breathed a sigh of relief, took a bottle of mineral water and handed it to Yunyen, and watched her gulp it down. After that, he supported the senior sister, who was still a little delirious, but much better than before, back to the remote corner of Tsutsumiri Betsuin. Yes, that is, back to the railing that gave Ryudo a huge visual impact before. "Yunyen, can you walk in by yourself?" "It should be fine. I'm much better now." After letting go of Ryudo's hand that had been holding her, Yunyen walked to the gap in the railing without looking back. Her movements were not very nimble as she went back in. What happened? Yunyen doesn't seem to be very happy. Since Yunyen woke up in the car, she has been giving off a strange feeling, as if she didn't dare to face Ryudo. Did I make her angry? As expected, taking her out for a drink in the middle of the night is a bit, Ryudo? Ryudo. Just as Ryuto was about to leave, Yunyen turned her head and called him with a strange tone. "Yunyen, is there anything else?" "It's just your previous confession. I haven't replied to you yet." "Oh, it's okay. It's the good guy card. I know what I'm doing." Ryudo turned his head and smiled at Yunyen when he heard this, and replied very straightforwardly. It was true that he liked senior sister Yunyen, but that sudden confession not long ago was just because he was in the mood, so he casually said what was in his heart. Therefore, from the beginning, Ryudo didn't expect to receive a serious reply. However, who would have thought that Yunyen would shake her head and use a shy tone to say, "Actually, if you don't mind, I think we can give it a try." Chapter 109. After so many male confessions in the past, Yunyen gave a different reply for the first time. "I think we can try it." When Yunyen said these words, she only felt that her face was burning, and her heartbeat became extremely fast. Because for her, this was a 0% proficiency, a reply that she had never given before. "What? I didn't hear it wrong, right?" At the same time, when he heard Yunyen's reply, Ryudo couldn't help but pinch his thigh to make sure that he was not dreaming. "Isn't that right? How is it possible?" After going out to have fun tonight and sending Yunyen back, she seemed to have agreed to Ryudo's previous confession. So Ryudo quickly took a deep breath and asked seriously, "Wait, Yunyen, do you mean what I understand?" "It means what you understand." "That's right. How do you know what I understand?" "Well, then let's be more straightforward. I think we can try to develop a relationship as a couple." Although she was a little embarrassed, Yunyen still expressed her thoughts very straightforwardly. As for why she was suddenly willing to develop a relationship with Ryudo, it was because of the consequences caused by a few glasses of draft beer. Although drinking too much beer would make one drunk, the speed of this kind of drunkenness was much faster than drinking white wine. So not long ago, on the way back, Yunyen, who was in a daze, had already sobered up. The moment she woke up, the previous confused memories poured into Yunyen's mind, especially the scene of her entangling Ryudo and pushing him to the back seat. Yunyen couldn't help but cover her face in embarrassment. She secretly blamed herself for doing such a shameless thing. But after that, Ryudo's response made Yunyen feel very warm. Under the premise of clearly expressing his feelings, in the face of Yunyen taking the initiative to throw herself into his arms, Ryudo still chose to run away and didn't take advantage of her while drunk. Yunyen was naturally aware of her unique and amazing charm. Her temperament was like a dose of poison, so poisonous that it was difficult for people to withstand it, let alone in the situation where she took the initiative to throw herself into his arms. Therefore, in this state, Ryudo was still able to resist the urge to make a move on her. His image in Yunyan's heart suddenly increased. Judging from the situation tonight, Ryudo seemed to be quite trustworthy. It seemed that dating him wasn't a bad thing. So on the way back, Yunyan kept thinking about this matter. After all, no matter what, Yunyan was only a 17-year-old young girl. It was natural for her to be curious and longing for love. Since the right person had already appeared, youth was too short. Why not try to start a relationship? Therefore, Yunyan gave her answer clearly. Of course, after understanding Yunyan's meaning, Ryudo couldn't help but tremble. No way. My God, I have 18 years in my previous life and 16 years in this life. In this life of 32 years, I finally have a girlfriend for the first time? Under the dim moonlight, Yunyan on the other side of the railing looked as beautiful as the moon goddess. And if he thought that such a beauty was going to be his girlfriend, it would be even more beautiful. So Ryudo couldn't help but laugh. Ha! This is great. From now on, senior sister Yunyan will be mine. Logically speaking, at this time, as long as Ryudo agreed, then he could live a shameless life starting tomorrow. But at the moment when he was about to agree, his mind suddenly flashed a memory not long ago. In the memory, Ryuto was standing face to face with a black-haired girl with a classical beauty, and she was also stretching out her white and delicate hand. If I don't need to be the Hakusho in 2 years, I'll go to your place and be the wife of the team leader. That should be fine, right? In the memory, the girl with a helpless smile reached out and held Ryuto's hand, and her eyes flashed with a complicated expression. The girl with a complicated expression was naturally the first person Ryudo confessed to, Kinzaki-colored glaze. At this time, although Yunyan agreed to be his girlfriend, what about colored glaze? She was still waiting in the cage of Kamiyoshi, waiting for the dawn to come. Could Ryudo abandon her? Thinking of this, Ryudo couldn't help but shake his head and said to Yunyan, Yunyan, I do like you. But there is something I have to be honest with you. Is it a problem with your identity and background? It's fine. I have a way to make my family not object. When Ryudo showed such an attitude, Yunyan's first thought was that he was concerned about her terrible family background. Everyone knew that the boss of the Tsukimi Corporation loved their daughter Yunyan very much, so he naturally didn't want his daughter to be together with Ryudo, an extreme leader who wandered the underworld. However, Yunyan had read so many romance novels over the years. She hadn't read them for nothing. After all, such situations of family opposition often appeared in novels, so there were naturally many effective solutions. The basic solution was to cry, throw a tantrum, and hang oneself. The intermediate solution was to directly run away from home, and the highest solution was to directly get married. In short, in Yunyan's opinion, the family's opposition wasn't a problem, and Ryudo didn't need to worry about it. At worst, he could just try all the high school and high schools. Of course, what Yunyan thought was 100% wrong. After all, what Ryudo wanted to confess was not the family problem, but, in fact, in addition to you, I have 2 women I like. When she heard Ryudo's confession, Yunyan was stunned, although this was a normal reaction. What is this? You just said that you like me not long ago, and then you turn around and say that there are 2 other women you like besides me. After being stunned for a few seconds, Yunyan said dumbfoundedly, Don't tell me that you haven't decided yet, and you haven't decided which one to choose from the 3 of us? No. I actually decided a long time ago. I want all 3, including you. For the second time, Ryudo made this harem declaration in front of the woman he liked for the second time. It was still the same shameless attitude and the same firm tone. Anyone who heard it would know that he was definitely not making a joke that wasn't funny. It had to be said that these words sounded a bit ridiculous, perhaps in front of a girl who had just agreed to be his girlfriend. After hearing this, Yunyan lowered her head slightly, making it impossible for people to see the change in her expression. Then, the young miss of the Tsukumi family asked in a creepy tone, Who? You. What did you say? I said, Who are the other 2? Wait a minute. There's something wrong with her tone. She's not going to take a knife and chop up the other 2, right? I don't remember Yunyan being sick and delicate, right? Even though he felt his scalp go numb, Ryudo still said honestly, Kenzaki-colored glaze, and Saitu Dunia. After saying these two names, Ryudo looked at Yunyan, who had lowered her head in fear, as if he wanted to know if she would explode in anger. But in the next moment, Yunyan quickly raised her head and replied in a calm tone, "So it's them. That's easy." Chapter 110. It had to be said that Yunyan's reply was really beyond Ryudo's expectation. In Ryudo's view, such a girl who had just fallen in love, when she heard that the person who was about to be her boyfriend had two other women that she liked, she would be furious. It should be impossible for her to say it's them. That's easy so casually, right? If it's light, she would scold him. If it's heavy, she would turn hostile on the spot. Isn't this the reaction of a normal woman? So when Ryudo confessed his harem purpose to her, he was already prepared to be scolded by Yunyan on the spot, and then he would use some methods to coax her back. Who knew that Ryudo liked to take the unusual path, but he didn't expect that Yunyan seemed to be such a strange person in this regard. She actually didn't have a big reaction to that harem declaration, which was simply incredible, so he could only scratch his head and say, "That, Yunyan? Do you actually understand what I mean?" "I understand. In addition to liking me, you also like colored glaze and dunia. You want to take us all home. What's so difficult to understand? Under the situation that you understand, for my extremely rude and shameless harem declaration, you don't have anything to be unhappy about? Of course there is, but it can't be helped, right? And many heroes in novels also have multiple wives. For example, Minamoto no Minamoto, the tale of Genji, even had more than a dozen wives. No, that's ancient times. It's modern now. There is a crime of bigamy in this year. Is your brain circuit a bit strange? It's obviously your brain circuit that is a bit strange. You just killed someone in the underground arena, and you still care about a crime of bigamy? At this moment, Yunyan's rhetorical question was obviously the same as what Longdo had said when he was drinking. However, it had to be said that it sounded quite reasonable. As the second generation of the extreme Dao, Ryudo couldn't be said to have committed all kinds of crimes, but at the very least, he had a reputation for being evil. A mere bigamy crime couldn't even be considered as an addition to his reputation. But even so, Ryudo couldn't help but continue to ask, "But won't you feel wronged if you have to share your lover with other women?" "Well, if it's colored glaze and dunia, then it's still acceptable. But if it's anyone else, then it can only be the two of them. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences." Yunyan shook her head firmly, as if warning Ryudo not to push his luck. Otherwise, Copper Skin Mastery and Iron Bone Mastery would not have been able to withstand a three-man hatchet, even with 100% mastery. Of course, one of the main reasons why Yunyan could accept it was because Colored Glaze and Dunia were her good friends, and they were also very good people with excellent character and appearance, and they were very pleasant to get along with. Sharing the same man with these two women who were very good and got along well with her was not that difficult for her to accept. Another reason why Yunyan could accept it was that Ryudo told her all his thoughts before the two of them officially established their relationship, which made Yunyan feel the man's sincerity. Telling her in advance that he was preparing to start a harem before the two of them started a relationship would have to bear the huge risk of being dumped on the spot, so normal people would not do this. Under normal circumstances, Ryudo could completely not tell Yunyan that he was thinking of the other two women and first become lovers with her. Telling her after the deed was done, or simply hiding it from her and secretly dating the other two was a very convenient choice for Ryudo. This way, he would not have to bear the risk of being dumped if he told her in advance, and he would definitely be able to get the beauty back. However, Ryudo chose to bear the risk and clearly told Yunyan his purpose in advance, and also made sure that she understood what it meant. This way, Yunyan could make a choice early, whether she was willing to share Ryudo with the other two, or turn around and leave and withdraw from the relationship. From this point, it could be seen that Ryudo had already given the women he liked the greatest degree of respect. Although he was still a playboy who wants them all, the kind who deserve to be hacked to death by women. But no matter what, after completely winning Yunyan's approval, the two of them still made great progress in their relationship. In short, "I'll go back first. See you at school tomorrow." Before leaving, Yunyin smiled and waved to Ryuto, and her figure disappeared into the night of Tsutsumira. But just when Ryuto returned to the black car and rushed home, his brain still had a buzzing feeling. Really? Did all of this really happen? I'm really in a relationship with Yunyin now? And she allowed me to start a harem? Is there such a good thing in the world? Generally speaking, this was impossible. After all, in this era, there were not many women who allowed their men to have other women. But fortunately, Yunyin and Tsutsumi was definitely not equal to ordinary women. From a certain point of view, she was actually a weirdo whose brain circuit was stranger than Ryuto's. But in this case, as long as I can deal with colored glaze and Dunia should be the most difficult to deal with. She is very possessive. As for colored glaze, by the way, what is colored glaze's attitude towards my harem declaration? When sitting in the car speeding on the streets of Tokyo at night, Ryuto suddenly thought of this serious problem. Speaking of which, Colored Glaze was the first heroine to hear Ryuto's shameless harem declaration, but she didn't seem to have made a statement about it. When she heard this declaration, Colored Glaze just asked him to leave indifferently and didn't say anything else. When the two met again, it was the same as usual. There was nothing special. So for a while, Ryuto couldn't figure out Colored Glaze's attitude towards this matter. Forget it. I'll ask clearly. It's too annoying to be unclear. Although it's a happy annoyance. When he heard Ryuto talking to himself, Narukai, who was sitting in the driver's seat, quickly turned around and asked, "What did you say just now? Do you have any orders?" Nothing. I just feel that I suddenly have such a beautiful girlfriend. I can't accept this reality. Indeed, I have never seen such a beautiful person like Yunyin in my life. Only a beauty like her is worthy of you. Narukai, your flattery skills have improved. No. It's all from the bottom of my heart. Speaking of this, Ryuto and Narukai both laughed, and the car was filled with a cheerful atmosphere. However, Narukai wasn't actually flattering. He was telling the truth. Yunyin was such a beautiful woman. If anyone could fall in love with her and create another little person, then even if they died, they wouldn't die in vain. Moreover, Ryuto now also thought so. Even if he was hit by a car on the spot, he would have no regrets in his life. Creak. Boom. So in the next second, a slightly bulky construction truck suddenly crashed from the side, directly hitting the side of the black car that Ryuto and Narukai were sitting in. Chapter 111. Have you ever experienced being hit by a construction truck from the side? Have you experienced the feeling of your car rolling on the ground and finally crashing to the ground? If not, congratulations, your life is very normal. If you have, congratulations too, your life in the other world must be very exciting. But Ryuto didn't fly to the other world. After all, he couldn't die without spending all his money. What exactly happened to me? When Ryuto woke up after a series of flying and bumps, he only felt like his body was falling apart. His ears were buzzing, the things in front of him were shaking, and his nose was full of the smell of gasoline. After being stunned for a few seconds, Ryuto's eyes gradually became clear. The first thing he could see was the blood-stained street floor. Today's night was darker, and the moonlight wasn't that bright, but the blood on the ground was still very obvious. Then, next to the blood was Narukai Otani, who was like a puppet with a broken string, twisted on the ground. That's right, it was Narukai Otani, the subordinate who was happily chatting with Ryuto a few seconds ago. But at this time, Narukai was obviously unable to speak, because his neck, hands, and feet were all twisted at strange angles, and his body was covered in blood. And next to the obviously dead Narukai, the black car with the mark of the dragon on the hood, which was carrying two people, was also like a pile of scrap metal, maintaining its flipped position. The car's windows were shattered, and a huge dent could be seen on the side of the car with the naked eye. Obviously, what happened to Ryuto was called a traffic accident. If he remembered correctly, it was because a huge mud truck had appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the night and knocked Longdo's car away. Because Ryuto's physical fitness was strong, and he also had two passive skills, he didn't die in the accident, but Narukai Otani in the front seat wasn't so lucky. What? What are you doing, bastard? When Ryudo dragged his numb body and struggled to stand up, he immediately looked at the dark road behind him, trying to see where the truck that knocked him flying was. This road was a remote road toward the Kamishimachi area. The road was quite narrow, and there were very few pedestrians and vehicles on the road in the middle of the night. But even so, a truck suddenly rushed out in the middle of the night and knocked him and his car flying. It was difficult to think of it as a normal accident. Was it an accident? No, it didn't look like an accident. Could it be that someone wanted to? You're still alive. Your luck is really bad. Before Long Do could react, a voice as cold as the frost of the Northern Kingdom drifted into his ears from behind. Behind? Wait, there's someone behind me? How did he? Although he didn't know when the other side came to the back, Ryudo made a prompt decision and rushed forward. He quickly opened up a distance. It was at the moment he rushed out. A piano string that was almost invisible in the night took away a bunch of hair on Ryudo's head. Of course, if he didn't rush forward in time, it wouldn't be as simple as his hair being taken away. This guy, is he a professional assassin? As Ryudo quickly landed on the ground in front of him and stood up while enduring the pain, a man who looked quite beautiful under the moonlight appeared not far away. It was hard to imagine that a man would actually use the word beautiful to describe him. He had a handsome face that was as angular as a classical sculpture, a pair of gentle blue eyes, fair skin, and a head of golden hair that was more dazzling than gold. Such a coquettish appearance, coupled with the particularly slender body in the elegant suit, set off this man as handsome as coming out of an oil painting. If you just looked at the appearance, I'm afraid anyone would treat this man as a model or a star. But it was a pity that this man named Kaijua didn't have such a glamorous profession, because he was a professional assassin, and he was the leader of the professional assassins. At the same time when he saw the man, the rogue analysis mirror in Ryudo's eyes also quickly fed back the information about his attributes. Name, Georgy Mihailovich Kaiser. Age, 30 years old. Attributes: Intellect LV3, Physique LV3, Courage LV4, Insight LV3, Charm LV3. If one were to look at the attributes of this assassin named Kaijua, he could be considered a top expert second only to that monster Yongji among all the enemies Long Do had encountered. His attributes were all balanced, with no flaws to be found in any aspect. The most important thing was that from the piano line that was faintly emitting a cold light during his operation and the accident just now, this man named Kaijua was obviously a veteran killer, a true professional assassin. Just the feeling he gave off was not something that the scoundrel Mike in the underground fighting arena could compare to. Michael the villain was huge and looked terrifying, but if Kaiser wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be much harder than killing a pig. From a certain point of view, killing Liamo-chan wasn't much harder than killing a pig. If you had died in that car accident, you wouldn't have died by my hands. What a pity. Just as Ryuto was sizing up this assassin from the land of ice and snow, Kaiser shook his head and spoke in a sad tone. However, Long Do did not reply. Instead, he quickly checked the condition of his body. His legs, arms, and other parts of his body were fractured in dozens of places. Moreover, when he used force, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. He couldn't even open his palms. No, I can't fight in this state. Seeing that Kaijua was getting closer and closer to him, Long Do slowly retreated while trying to think of a way to survive. If he was in perfect condition, he wouldn't mind sparring with this assassin named Kaiser. But as someone who just went through a serious car accident, not to mention sparring, it was already a miracle that he didn't collapse on the spot. Although he had a gun in his inventory, his severely fractured arms couldn't hold it in aim. He could barely hold the gun to scare people, but it was useless against a professional assassin. Therefore, from all angles, this was an absolute dead end. There was no chance of survival at all. Since he was going to die, then so be it. But before he died, he had to get some information. So Ryudo pondered for a second or two before sitting down like a hoodlum. He said to Kaiser, "You win. But before you kill me, can you let me know?" "I refuse." Ryudo wanted to say, "Before I die, can you let me know who wants to kill me?" But before he could finish his sentence, a thin piano string wrapped around Long Do's neck, accompanied by a cold "I refuse." Then, his vision flew up and he fell into darkness. Chapter 112. Bastard, I'm just a worker. Do you have to work so hard? Will it kill you to say more? Just when he was killed by the assassin named Kaiser with a piano wire, Ryudo couldn't help but curse in his heart. Traditional villains would say a lot of things before killing the protagonist, and most of them wouldn't even be able to kill the protagonist. In the end, the assassin that Long Do met killed him without even saying a single word. Such professional ethics. Was he planning to compete for the top 10 Outstanding Assassin Award? Detected that the host is on the verge of death, an emergency rescue plan is about to be initiated by spending 800,000 yen to erase the fact of death. Beep, 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 erase successful. After experiencing the familiar darkness on the other side, along with the familiar system revival prompt, Ryudo's eyes once again appeared the railing on the side of Tsutsumiru Betsuen. Before dying this time, he deliberately changed to the title of Desperado to reduce the revival cost by 20%. It was better than nothing. 200,000 yen wasn't much, but it wasn't little either. After saving a few times, he could still buy a skill. At this moment, from the courtyard on the other side of the railing, he could vaguely see Yunyan's figure skipping away. However, Yunyan couldn't have imagined that the boy who just established a relationship with her would immediately become a strange body art under the collision of the car and the steel wire. Seriously, can't you let me go home happily and have a wet dream? Why must an assassin come and mess with me at this time? Suddenly, Ryudo helplessly walked toward the car where Narukai was. At the same time, he took out his phone and dialed a familiar phone number. Beep, 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 beep. The phone was connected after more than 10 seconds. From the other end of the phone came an obviously confused male voice. Because it was already 1:00 in the night, sensible Goro who received the call asked in a daze, "Boss, what's the matter? It's so late. I'm being chased by an assassin. Go and see if you can find a guy named Georgy Mihailovich Kaiser. Find out who he is and who he has seen recently." Understood. Keep in touch. After hearing Ryudo's words, Sensible on the other end of the phone immediately woke up and turned on the huge military-grade special computer beside his bed. In terms of investigating the identity of an assassin, there were probably not many people in the world who could do better than Sensible. After all, he was a cyber detective who could even hack into the core system of the police station. If that was the case, it wouldn't take long to find out the killer's identity. Even if he used a fake name, there would still be some clues left behind. The next problem would be the car. Thinking of this, his exclusive black car with a dragon's mark on the hood appeared at the corner of the street. From Ryudo's point of view, the car that he was used to was like a time bomb that could explode at any time. While walking towards the car, Ryudo's fingers quickly slid across the phone's keyboard as if he was sending a long text message to someone. "Second-generation leader, you're back." When he saw Ryudo walking towards him, Narukai, who was smoking in the driver's seat, quickly stood up and was ready to open the door for him. "Narukai, I just sent you a text message to ask you to buy something. Why didn't you reply?" Text message? Sorry, I didn't see it." After hearing Ryudo's reminder, Narukai quickly opened the phone and opened the text message that had just been sent. Then, his face suddenly changed. Because the content of this text message was, "Our car may be installed with listening devices and locators. Don't talk nonsense from now on." That's right, at least from the previous situation, Ryudo thought there was a high probability that his car was tampered with. Recalling the situation where he was directly hit by the truck not long ago, the assassin named Kaiser clearly knew when Ryudo's car would pass by the intersection. In the middle of the night where visibility was quite poor, if there was no device similar to a locator, it would be difficult to hit so accurately. Although listening devices and locators may also be in small things such as phones, compared to the phones carried by the 2G Dao, it was much simpler to tamper with the car. Let's go back first, but I want to sleep in the car, so drive steadily." After patting Narukai's shoulder, Ryudo sat in the car, but this time he sat in the back seat. "Okay, you take your time to rest." Narukai was also experienced. Although he encountered an unexpected incident, he still didn't panic. He still calmly sat in the driver's seat and started the car. As the car started, Ryudo sat in the back seat and looked at the time while looking at the map of Yodo on his phone. From Tsutsumiru Betsuen to the place where the previous collision occurred, It was about 15 minutes away. If he drove slowly, he could use more than 20 minutes. And if I remember correctly, the accident should have happened here before. After looking for a while, Ryudo locked on to a street not far from Kamashido, which was also the place where Kaiser was going to ambush him with the mud truck. Under the premise of knowing such a thing, it was not difficult for Ryudo to escape this disaster. Although Kaiser has a locator that can roughly determine the distance and direction of the car. But after all, he was driving an engineering mud truck. If he really wanted to race, it was impossible for him to outrun Ryudo's Hummer. However, what Ryudo wanted at this time was not to escape Kaiser's pursuit, but to capture that guy. Capture him alive. After all, this assassin who suddenly appeared was really outrageous. Ryudo was eager to know who he was. Of course, although Ryudo did have a super enemy, Tenmu Iam, today's incident should have nothing to do with Iam. After all, if it was an assassin sent by Iam, then before killing Ryudo, he would inevitably record a video of him having fun, and he would never let Ryudo die so quickly. But that assassin called Kaijua was terrifyingly efficient. Not to mention recording a video, he didn't even bother to say a word to Ryudo and directly killed him. This was not the style of Iam's people at all. Therefore, the probability of sending Kaiser to assassinate Ryudo was not Iam, but someone else. For the bastard who dared to send an assassin to kill him, Ryudo had to find him no matter what. From this point of view, it was best to capture Kaiser alive, which would maximize the probability of finding the mastermind behind the scenes. Decided. Let's give that guy a mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. After quickly making a plan in his mind, Ryudo gently opened the left side of the back seat, and then made a slow-down gesture to Narukai in front of him. When Narukai slowed down the car again, making it no different from a bicycle, Ryudo's entire body turned outward and landed on the street outside like a gymnast. Chapter 113. Then, Ryudo quickly stopped a taxi under the stunned gaze of the passers-by. After sitting in the taxi, he put the map on his phone in front of the driver and said, "Drive here as fast as you can. It doesn't matter if you exceed the speed limit." Dear customer, your request is... Pa. Before the taxi driver could react, a stack of 200,000 yuan was already in front of him. This 200,000 yuan was saved by the title Desperado when he was resurrected. It would be a waste if he didn't use it. After handing over the money, Ryudo continued, "Keep the change, drive as fast as you can. I have a life-related matter." Oh. Very good. Then you found the right person. It was unknown if it was the 200,000 yuan bill that had moved him, or if it was the human life that had moved him. In short, the taxi driver immediately switched his car stereo to his favorite music, Age Your Dream. Charge. For the glory of the driver. Along with the passionate music, the driver stepped on the accelerator with a loud bang. The car almost hit a nearby electric pole and almost sent Long Do away on the spot again. Actually, Long Do had hoped that they would arrive at their destination quickly. However, this driver's driving style was really too awesome. The small taxi made a beast-like roar and sped on the street at a speed that made people feel like they ate gunpowder. Inertia drift, brake drift, jump overtake, 90 degrees sharp turn, gutter turn. The driver's left hand was swinging the gear lever as if he was dancing, while his right hand was playing with the steering wheel like a teenager playing discs. At the same time, his whole body was rocking non-stop, just like his lost youth. Looking at the driver's driving posture and the speed that was almost exploding on the dashboard, if it was a normal passenger, his pants would be wet on the spot. Is this driver okay? Is it okay for a retired driver to drive a taxi? But it doesn't matter. It's just 800,000 yuan. Just like that, under the crazy driving of the driver, the Ryudo sped through the streets and alleys of Tokyo at an amazing speed. It was as if he was riding an AE-86 through 5 consecutive hairpin turns. But even so, Ryudo quickly calmed down and dialed another familiar number in the car. And that's it. Find the largest tonnage with the best protective measures. Be careful not to make too much noise. The faster the better. When hanging up the phone, Ryudo took a deep breath and looked at the rapidly changing night scene of Tokyo outside the window. He silently prayed that he could reach the destination alive. Of course, after Ryudo swayed in this torrent for 5 minutes, he barely arrived near the destination. Before getting out of the car, Ryudo smiled at the driver. "Thank you very much, ugh. Your driving skill is great. My organs didn't come out." "No problem. This is my business card. Call me if you have such an urgent task in the future." Looking at Ryuto, who reached out to cover his mouth and opened the door, the driver enthusiastically gave him a thumbs up. "I'll go first. It will be troublesome if I'm caught by the traffic police. After all, I don't have a license. Bye." After leaving the last sentence that sounded extremely dangerous, the taxi driver quickly fled the scene, leaving Ryudo standing alone in the cold night wind. It's not easy to live. Forget it. Kawaki-nin should be here soon. Suddenly, Ryudo turned his head and looked around. There were few people around this dim street. After all, it was already night, and this was the remote end of the street. It's just that the street where Ryudo was now happened to be at the other end of the street where Kaiser was lying in ambush. If he rushed to the left end of this street, he should be able to see Kaiser waiting quietly with the mud truck. In other words, Ryudo had already come behind the assassin, behind the mud truck that almost killed him not long ago. There are still about 10 minutes before Narukai arrives here. If Kawaki-nin doesn't drag it out too much, it should be enough. In this way, Ryudo first walked quietly along the street for a while. He saw the familiar mud truck parked at the intersection. The blonde assassin was sitting in the car, so he stopped and quietly returned along the road. Now that the target has been determined, Ryudo only had to wait in the cold night wind. He was waiting for a man who liked Butts very much. About 13 minutes later, the man arrived as promised. He was driving a conspicuous, huge, yellow, heavy-duty road roller. This roller looked a whole size bigger than an ordinary car, and there was a huge round wheel in front. It looked like a yellow steel monster when driving on the road. When the roller stopped beside Ryudo, a familiar head poked out of the car. Second-generation leader Kamita Kawaki-nan is here to report. The heavy vehicle and collision protection equipment you want have been found. Suddenly, as Ryudo's loyal subordinate, the black-clothed Kyoto, who usually likes to watch wrestling movies with his brother, Ando, jumped out of the car and bowed respectfully to Ryudo. Although there were many people in the Rulon group that could be used, Ryudo trusted the most were the 3 people who had gone through life and death with him, namely Narukai Otani, Kamita Kawaki-nan, and Kamita Ando. Although the names of the 2 brothers were not very pleasant to the ears, their loyalty was still guaranteed, and they were quite efficient when it came to doing things. So they're here. Very good. Ryudo looked at the heavy roller, and then looked at the 3-in-1 set of collision protection suit, helmet, and cushion in Kawaki-nan's hand, and couldn't help but nod to him. Then Ryudo asked seriously, "Kawaki-nan, there is a task for you to do now, but it may be a little dangerous." "Yes. Please instruct me." "Put on this collision protection suit, drive this road roller down this street, and smash a construction truck at the end of the street into smithereens." "Do you dare to do it?" "Hey, why wouldn't I dare? It's a piece of cake." Although Kawaki-nan was naive and liked wrestling, he was still an official member of the Rulon group, so it was natural for him to perform similar tasks. So Kawaki-nan didn't even hesitate to put on the collision protection suit, helmet, and cushion in front of him. After that, he got on the heavy roller again. Charge! For the glory of the Rulon group. After an angry roar, Kawaki-nan drove the roller toward the other side of the road. It was late at night now, and there was no one around this empty street, which made it convenient for Kawaki-nan to drive the roller forward. However, just as the roller was coming from the other side of the street, Kaiser, who was sitting on the truck with a red wine glass, elegantly waited for the arrival of the prey. Chapter 114. My name is Georgy Mihailovich Kaiser, 30 years old. I'm an assassin. I don't have a fixed residence, I'm unmarried, and I work for an assassin organization called Executor. I have to work overtime every day until 8 in the morning before I can go home. I smoke 10 packs of cigarettes a day, and I can't get enough alcohol. I go to bed at 8 in the morning and sleep for 3 hours every day. Before I go to bed, I must drink a glass of life water, and then I look in the mirror to admire my beautiful face. Whenever I go to bed, I can fall asleep after lying down for about 2 hours. I sleep until 11 in the morning, and my fatigue and stress will never be completely eliminated. The doctor said that I may die at any time, and it's a blessing to live to 30 years old. I'm very happy to hear this because I'm already 30 years old. Finally, I'm generally reluctant to pay with cash, so I will propose to help the doctor kill someone to offset the cost. This is the virtue of a professional assassin. But the doctor usually can't say who he wants to kill, so I kill the doctor to help them reach heaven as soon as possible. I'm really a good person. Thinking of this, Kaiser couldn't help but shake the red wine glass in his hand. The life water, 96 degrees Celsius, in the glass exuded a strong alcohol smell, and its lethality was comparable to industrial alcohol. Logically speaking, he shouldn't drink at work, especially as a top professional assassin like Kaiser. Gulp. However, as he looked at the map on the tablet with a small red, constantly moving, he happily drank a mouthful of the pure water of life. When the alcohol slid down his throat, the burning sensation stimulated Kaiser's nerves and made him more energetic to devote himself to the great assassination career. After killing the target, I'll have to celebrate. Is it because the guy drives so slowly because the target is sleeping? But it's almost there. Looking at the red on the map slowly driving toward the street here, Kaiser also put his hand on the steering wheel of the construction truck. Tonight's mission for Kaiser was just a very common one among the countless missions he had performed in the past. The mission target's route home was basically fixed. As long as he waited at the intersection, there was a high probability of hitting the target from the side. Although using a prop like the construction truck was against Kaiser's assassination aesthetics, but he didn't have any assassination aesthetics to speak of, so it didn't matter. Rumble. Rumble. Not long after, Kaiser heard the clear sound of a vehicle in the dark night, and he quickly focused his mind. Is he here? It didn't seem to be the case. The location of the vehicle shown on the tablet map was still half a street away, so the sound he heard now should be the sound of a passing car. Although it was already late at night, this was the downtown area of Tokyo after all. It was inevitable that some vehicles would pass by. Therefore, Kaiser didn't pay much attention to the rumbling behind him. By the time he reacted, it was already a little too late. Yeah. Go to hell, trash. Boom. Accompanied by the particularly terrifying and intense collision sound at night, Mr. Crow, who was driving the road roller at the back, stepped on the accelerator frantically and slammed into the back of the construction vehicle. The huge wheels in front of the huge road roller crushed the rear half of the construction vehicle and pushed the front half of the vehicle towards the wall at the other end of the street. But fortunately, Kaiser was also a professional. So at the last moment when the vehicle was about to be crushed together with him, he slammed open the window glass, jumped out with a red wine glass, and did a flat version of the leap of faith. But even so, the huge impact and flying parts still blew Kaiser's body more than 10 meters away, and he was injured all over. What the hell happened to me? When Kaiser woke up after a series of flying and bumps, he only felt that his body was falling apart. There was a buzzing sound in his ears, the things in front of him were shaking, and his nose was full of the smell of gasoline. After being in a daze for a few seconds in this situation, Kaiser's eyes gradually became clear. First of all, what he could see was the messy fences on the street, and his construction truck that had lost its shape. Behind the construction truck was a huge road roller. The man in the driver's seat looked a bit dizzy, but because of the complete protective measures, it didn't seem to be a big deal. Is there a mistake? Am I dreaming? Seeing this strange scene, Kaiser couldn't believe his eyes. I, the executor killer, Georgy Mihailovich Kaiser, was hit from behind by a road roller in the middle of the night when I was driving a construction truck? If this report was written and sent to the boss, he would definitely think that Kaiser drank the water of life until he became stupid. How could there be such a ridiculous thing? Hey, don't say, there really is such a thing, and something even more ridiculous is yet to come. You're still alive, you're lucky. Before Kaiser could react, a voice full of ridicule floated into his ears from behind. Behind? Wait, there's someone behind me? How did he? Although he didn't know when the enemy had circled around to the back, Kaiser made a prompt decision and pounced forward. He quickly opened up a distance. Logically speaking, This prompt decision was enough to deal with most attacks. Unfortunately, the opponent seemed to have already prepared for this. Whoosh, whoosh. The moment Kaiser rushed forward, accompanied by the sound of wind breaking, he felt a chill on his thigh, followed by a bone-piercing pain. Ugh. This is. Under the dim moonlight, Kaiser, who struggled to get up from the ground, looked down and realized that a military knife with a serrated edge had pierced deeply into his thigh. This military knife pierced so deeply that it directly pierced through the front of his thigh and came out from the back. Coupled with the unique serrated structure, it felt like a huge poisonous thorn was stuck in the area of the knife, and he couldn't pull it out. What made Kaiser's heart go cold was that the young man who just threw the military knife and completely deprived him of his ability to move was now aiming a pistol at him. It's over. It's all over. His body was severely injured in the car accident, and his thigh was destroyed by a knife. The current Kaiser had no way of dealing with a pistol. Therefore, he could only bitterly smile and said to the young man, "You win. But before you kill me, can you let me know?" Originally, Kaiser wanted to say, "Can you let me know how I fell?" At least he would die with an understanding of the situation. "Okay, no problem." Halfway through the sentence, the young man with the gun, Ryudo, smiled and replied while putting down the gun in his hand. "No way. This guy is really that easy to talk to? If this is the case, I can." But just as Kaijua's face showed a hopeful expression, a baseball bat smashed into the back of his head from behind, knocking him to the ground on the spot. "Don't worry, trash, before I kill you. I will not only let you know how you fell, but I will also make you regret being born." After putting away the gun in his hand, Ryudo snorted at Kaiser on the ground. He looked at him as if he was looking at a pile of unrecyclable garbage. Chapter 115. Wait, Narukai, you hit him so hard. Don't tell me you killed him? Seeing Kaiser fall to the ground with blood flowing out from the back of his head like a fountain, Ryudo couldn't help but show a puzzled expression to the subordinate who hit him. In fact, when Kaiser's car was smashed, Ryudo also raised his gun and aimed at him. Another member of the Rulon group also quietly came over, and that was Narukai Otani, who parked the car not far away. While Kaiser's attention was focused on Ryudo, Narukai picked up the bat and gave him a righteous sneak attack, knocking down the assassin on the spot. After knocking out Kaiser, Narukai said confidently, "Don't worry, boss. I know my limits. He probably won't die. At most, he will become a vegetable." "You're probably and at most really make me feel very gratified. Next time, please use your brain, idiot. If he becomes a vegetable, I will send you to take care of him for a lifetime." "Huh. No way." "Yes, so help him stop the bleeding now, otherwise, it will be your job to take care of this grandson every day." Hearing his boss's words, Ming Hai hurriedly helped Kaijua, who had fainted on the ground, up. He hurriedly took out a Band-Aid from his pocket and placed it on the wound on the back of Kaijua's head. "Are you kidding me? What can a Band-Aid do?" Or maybe he was afraid that Narukai's treatment of the wound would make it worse. Ryudo quickly helped carry Kaiser into the car and instructed Narukai to drive to the secret doctor of Kamadachi. Although it was late at night, the car accident caused here not long ago had attracted the surrounding residents, and some even called the police. However, there was no need for Ryudo to worry about this kind of thing. As the pilot, Kawaki-nan would take care of it. At most, he would be imprisoned for a few months. It wasn't like he hadn't been imprisoned before. Speaking of which, Mr. Crow actually liked prison. The inmates there had nice words and big buttocks. Every time Mr. Crow went in, it was like going home. If he brought his brother and manhood along, it would be even more fun. But no matter what, Kaiser, the assassin who came to assassinate Ryudo tonight, had been successfully arrested. It would be much easier to investigate the employer behind him. On the way to the secret doctor, Ryudo took a picture of Kaiser's corpse and sent it to Sensible's phone. That way, he would be able to help Sensible find out more about this guy's identity and employer. Not long after, the car returned to Kamishitachi and drove towards a dilapidated alley where no one usually came and went. For the members of Kyoto who were often injured, on the one hand, they did not dare to go to a regular hospital for treatment. On the other hand, there was a need for treatment, so the industry of secret doctor was born. But don't think that the name secret doctor sounded bad *SS. In fact, to put it bluntly, they were just a group of unlicensed doctors. Some of them didn't even know whether they studied medicine or not. For example, the secret doctor who often treated Narukai at this time was actually selling pork. That's right. When Ryudo saw Narukai carrying the half-dead Kaiser into this pork shop on the road to the underworld, he was stunned. The most shocking thing was that the person who came out to greet them was a shirtless man wearing an apron and rain boots that the owner of the pork stall often wore. His body was stained with blood, but he wore a mask and rubber gloves as if it was natural. Boss, don't think that this place is trash, but Dr. Wu Zhang's skill is quite good. He has saved hundreds of brothers. When he followed the unlicensed doctor to carry Kaiser into the pork shop, Narukai proudly turned his head and introduced him to Ryuto. What about the brothers that were not saved? It seems to be about the same number, but among the secret doctors, he is the one with the highest success rate, more than 50%. If something happens to me in the future and you dare to bring me here, I won't let you go even if I die. Looking around at the pig blood, pig meat, and pig offal everywhere, and the smell of pig stench wafted in the air, Ryudo couldn't help but feel a little nauseous. But Narukai didn't lie. Although Dr. Wu Zhang looked more like he was cutting pork than human flesh, he quickly stopped Kaiser's bleeding. After checking that there were no major problems, he picked up the bottle of sleeping pills. Speaking of which, should I take 2 or 5 pills? Forget it, whatever. Under Long Do's dumbfounded gaze, Dr. Wu Zhang casually poured out a few sleeping pills and stuffed them into Kaijua's mouth. Then, he found a few ropes and tied Kaijua to the emergency table with a tortoise shell. Then, he held a cigarette in his mouth and walked to the side to watch the movie. For a moment, the small room was filled with demons. The smell of smoke and pig stench flew together. In between, there was also the smell of disinfectant and alcohol. It was really unforgettable. When Ryudo and Narukai left with Kaiser, who was tied up tightly by the tortoiseshell and overdosed, and paid Dr. Wu Zhang a large sum of money, it was already 2:00 in the morning. Because there was still no news from Sensible, Ryudo went home to rest. At the same time, he asked Narukai to watch over the killer and not give him a chance to escape. Just like that, Long Do finally laid down on the soft bed, and the magnificent night finally came to an end. From last night to this morning, Long Do felt like a century had passed. During this time, he encountered some good things, such as Senior Sister Yunyan, Senior Sister Yunyan, Senior Sister Yunyan, and so on. Perhaps because he was too tired, Ryudo almost fell asleep as soon as he touched the pillow. In the dream, he saw Yunyan lying next to him in a very cool nightgown. At the same time, she turned sideways and smiled at him. Yunyan, I beep beep beep, beep beep beep, beep beep beep. Just as Ryudo instinctively wanted to hug her, his cell phone rang at an inappropriate time. Ryudo picked up the phone with a face of resentment. The time shown on it was 7:05. The person who called was Sensible Goro. Hello? Did you find any clues? Because his intimacy with Yunyan was disturbed, Ryudo's tone was obviously a little upset. However, Sensible on the other side of the phone obviously didn't have time to care about this. He said in an anxious tone, "Not good, boss. Something big happened this time." Sensible was usually a very calm person. Since he thought it was something big, then the trouble this time was definitely not small. So Ryudo also woke up and asked seriously, "What's the matter?" "It's not convenient to talk about it on the phone. Come to the company quickly. Let's meet here." The company Sensible said was naturally the Rulong Security Company that was now in operation and had received the first business. Sensible personally arranged many security devices there, and there were special personnel patrolling day and night. It could be said to be a quite safe place to talk. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.